Chapter 651. Doflamingo was unwilling, but he could only hold it in and cursed Akainu, whose nose was sharper than a dog's, dozens of times. Then he remembered that Caesar's experiment had not made any progress, and he was relieved. The human gigantism experiment requires a long period of observation. Doflamingo did not have the leisure time to waste, but he secretly hated Akainu in his heart. For this mad dog, he was also very disgusted. The nickname Akainu came from this. Once he catches the enemy, no one can escape his nose that is sharper than a dog's. Maybe it wasn't Dustless's secret hindrance, Akainu had already come to the door. During this period, under the leadership of Doflamingo, they secretly visited the Pluton that Caesar was making. The exaggerated area, even Dustless couldn't help but be stunned after seeing it. It's no different from a moving steel island, and it's even better than that. The design of Pluton involves too much. The hardness and power of this super battleship are beyond imagination. According to Caesar's description, one shot can flatten an island at will. And the material used to build Pluton is very strange and extremely hard, which coincides with the stone carved with poneglyph and cannot be destroyed at all. This special material is not in Caesar's hands at present, so he can only choose other materials to replace it. Dustless wanted to melt the special material used to record the poneglyph to make Pluton, but after thinking about it, the poneglyphs scattered all over the world are rare, and it will take several years to collect it, and it is not enough to cope with the huge project of Pluton. Dustless also needs Robin to interpret the right and wrong grievances from hundreds of years ago. Therefore, he accepted Caesar's suggestion and used other materials to temporarily replace it. Although the ability in all aspects has been reduced, the power is still shocking enough to destroy an island. After Dressrosa dawdled for a few more days, Dustless returned to Mariewa. After working hard for several days, Dustless also felt deeply tired. After a simple wash, he was about to sleep when Hancock ran to Dustless's bedroom with messy steps. She wasn't as elegant as she usually was, and she didn't even knock on the door. A day ago, Marine Headquarters retired Admiral Z led his trainee ship to be attacked by pirates. All crew members were killed except for him and 2 students. Z's proud arm was cut off. Hancock reported. Dustless's sleepiness instantly disappeared. He couldn't help but be curious as he asked, "Who did it?" Although that old man Z is over 60 years old, his body is still as strong as an ox. Was it done by the 4 emperors? Z is famous for his armament hockey. His perverted defense is well known all over the world. To be able to cut off Z's arm, one can imagine how much power it takes. Hancock shook her head, and her beautiful eyes looked strange. There were very few people who could do this, and without exception, they were the kings of the sea. However, the instigator of this incident was unheard of. It seems to be called Edward Weevil, with a bounty of 480 million berries. Hancock's pretty face looked strange, and she tilted her head and spat out a cute little fragrance. His size and dress are similar to the Yonko, 4 emperors, Whitebeard, but that guy's IQ is not high. There are rumors that he is Whitebeard's biological son. Edward Wilbur. He's probably a cameo. After thinking for a long time, Dustless didn't have the memory of this person. He took the newspaper from Hancock's hand and his personal information. Dustless remembered such a character. Once with overwhelming strength, he destroyed the recruit ship led by Z and annihilated all of them, and he also cut off Z's right arm. Is this guy really Whitebeard's son? Hancock asked. Edward Weevil and the information is completely different from Whitebeard except for his beard and physique, and the weapons he uses are close to Whitebeard. But the most speechless thing is that this guy turned out to be a moron. It doesn't matter if he is Whitebeard's son. As a pirate, and with a bounty of 480 million berries, he can cut off Z's arm, which shows that his strength is at least at the level of an admiral. It doesn't matter whose son it is, this world is full of bloodlines. If he is not an ability user, he can cut off Z's arm with his own strength. It is estimated that his strength should be at the level of Whitebeard. Dustless was convinced. There was a little surprise in his words. This character that he had never heard of was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 waves. The eyes of the whole world are probably focused on him. In the past, Wu Qin and Z fought several times. Although Z suppressed him every time, it didn't mean that Z didn't live up to his name. Purely using armament hockey, the only one in the Marine who can match him is Garp. In other words, it's not that Z is too weak, it's that Edward Weevil is too strong. The only pity is that his wisdom is not high, only comparable to a child of a few years old. Sengoku is going to go berserk. Dustless touched his chin and laughed. Even if Z's influence is not as good as the hero of the Marine, Vice Admiral Garp, he is still a famous figure. Akainu, Hakiji, Kizaru, and the future Vice Admirals, most of them are Z's students. If Sengoku doesn't come up with a reasonable explanation, it will be difficult to calm the anger of these students. It's not only the Marine headquarters that can't swallow this, it's also a shock to the whole world. The right arm of a retired admiral was cut off by a pirate. This is already related to the prestige of the Marine. Sengoku naturally can't just muddle through. He and Z are comrades of the same period. Their relationship is better than brothers. It's destined that Sengoku can't swallow this insult. Rumble, as soon as his voice fell, the Den Den Mushi on the table rang. Looking at it, it's the Den Den Mushi used by Sengoku and Dustless. The rumble sound has the smell of gunpowder. Dustless can already see the pig liver color of Sengoku. Chapter 652. The Den Den Mushi's expression was fierce. It's not difficult to see how angry Fleet Admiral Sengoku was. In the past, the arm of a Marine admiral was cut off. There must be a limit to his arrogance and barbarism. That damn pirate must pay the price. The moment he picked up the Den Den Mushi, Sengoku's hysterical roar came over, and this look of resentment seemed to jump out from the Den Den Mushi. Think about it, Z is not only a close friend of Sengoku, but to some extent, like Garp, he symbolizes the face of the Marine. Don't be impatient, don't forget that you are a Marine Fleet Admiral, you have to keep a poker face at all times. Dustless quietly sipped his tea and calmly said. The one who was cut off is your subordinate and close friend, what will you do? Sengoku asked in a low and hoarse voice, his tone was full of violence. As a Fleet Admiral, he really has to keep a poker face and not be seen through by others. However, there is a saying that the law is nothing more than human feelings, and Sengoku is not heartless. It depends on the person. With a deep light in his eyes, Dustless gave an ambiguous answer. For example, if someone like Hawkeye is killed one day, Dustless doesn't mind avenging him. As for Doflamingo, this kind of alien, not whipping his body after death is already too easy for him. By the way, is that guy really Whitebeard's son? This is interesting, the son of the old Whitebeard is an imbecile. Is this karma? Dustless said with interest. Imbecile. Sengoku's face turned green, and he was dissatisfied. The imbecile you said almost killed an admiral. If he can give birth to such an imbecile, I don't think Whitebeard will mind having a few more. Sengoku said angrily, although Z is old and his strength is not as good as before, he is still a Marine admiral. What I said is the truth. That guy's brain is indeed lacking something. He didn't expect Sengoku to care so much about Z. Then he frowned and said, Z didn't lose to him unjustly. That guy's body is not right. There are several shocking scars on his body. His head and hands seem to have been cut off, but he is still alive. It sounded like a fantasy story, but that was the truth. There was even a photo as proof, so there was no room for quibbling. In the photos sent by Hancock, Edward Weevil's neck and arms were clearly visible. Apparently, they had been cut off by something sharp, but strangely, they overlapped. This meant that he had some kind of extraordinary healing ability. This guy is surprisingly similar to Kaido the 100 Beast. Carefully looking at the tall man in the photo, Dustless immediately thought of 100 Beast Kaido. Although there was a difference in ability, his physique and all kinds of wounds all over his body were clearly visible. They were all veterans. However, you should have a deeper meaning for coming to me, Sengoku. Dustless asked bluntly. Even if the Marine headquarters really wants to deal with Edward Weevil, the task can be handed over to Kizaru and Akiji in the New World. Dustless is far away in Mariehua. As a result, it may delay the opportunity. Sengoku is such a smart person, naturally, it is impossible for him to make a mistake. Hearing this, Sengoku, who was far away in the Marine headquarters, immediately nodded slightly. He did have other purposes. Although that guy is strong. In the end, he is just a little kid who has not seen the world. His brain is not enough and he is easy to control. Sengoku said. Dustless's eyes flashed. After a little thought, he understood what Sengoku meant. Are you going to recruit him into the organization, 7 Warlords of the Sea? Dustless said straightforwardly. Dustless couldn't help but look gloomy. Even though the relationship with Z was extremely unharmonious, he felt that it was not worth it for him at the moment. Z dedicated his life to the Marine and the whole world. But this world mercilessly abandoned Z, that's not what I mean. For that bullshit, Whitebeard too, I can't wait to tear him to pieces. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and the desk in front of Sengoku instantly burst into powder. I am also helpless. This is what Mariehua and the other 5 meant. Their authority is above everything. In the end, I am just a Marine Fleet Admiral. In the end, Sengoku's tone was full of loneliness. In an instant, he was dozens of years older, revealing deep helplessness. That indescribable special feeling, through the den mushi, fell into Dustless's ears one by one. Dustless couldn't help but look up and sigh. Sengoku was telling the truth. He was just a Marine Fleet Admiral. At most, he was an employee with more power. At some times, the so-called Marine is more like a scapegoat. Dustless can also understand the idea of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. With such a powerful high-end combat power, and a bad brain, easy to fool, it is indeed the most appropriate to pull him into the 7 Warlords of the Sea. At present, there is only one seat left in the Shichibukai: Crocodile, Gecko Moria, Tyrant Kuma, Doflamingo, Hawkeye, and Jinbe. If Edward Wilbur joins, it will be enough. As for the original Empress, Boa Hancock, she has become Dustless's maid. What do you think of this proposal? Sengoku asked expectantly. Hearing this, Dustless's thoughts quickly changed, calculating the gains and losses. After about a few seconds of silence, he licked his dry and cracked lips, and his hesitant eyes shone with awe-inspiring luster. Sorry, Sengoku, I refuse this proposal. I can't accept Edward Wilbur as a Shichibukai. This is not an exchange between superiors and subordinates, but an order issued by the Celestial Dragons. His eyes were as calm as stagnant water. Dustless made a wise judgment. He had already thought of a candidate for the last Shichibukai position. As for Edward Wilbur, he should go home and play with mud. Chapter 653. Hearing the solemn voice coming from the other side of the den mushi, Sengoku couldn't help but stare. This slightly magnetic and full of reason tone is obviously not a joke. Dustless will not agree with Edward Weevil to become a Shichibukai. Although he doesn't know the reason, Sengoku heard Dustless's unshakable tone. Obviously, even if the Gorosei came in person, Dustless will not change his point of view. When he was about to ask what the reason is, Sengoku suddenly thought about it and shut up. This is the scene he wants to see, there is no need to ask for trouble. If the Gorosei are not happy, let them find trouble with the Celestial Dragons. Sengoku also has the mentality of being a shopkeeper. He put the ball in the Gorosei's court. That's what it means to be a superior. If the Gorosei have any dissatisfaction, they can find Dustless, who is a celestial dragons, to vent their anger. Ah! Didn't you want to pull that guy into the Shichibukai? Now you want to kill him. On the blue sea, several marine battleships were moving quickly. Kizaru, who turned off the Den Mushi, was puzzled. At first, he received the order to pull Edward Weevil into the Shichibukai, but now Sengoku asked to kill him directly. The contrast between before and after is too big. What the final decision is, that's a game for the big guys to play, we just need to obey the result. Stretching lazily, Aokiji took off the blindfold on his eyes and stood up from the couch. Unlike usual, his eyes were dotted with cold light at the moment. For Z, he was grateful to him and treated him like a teacher. It's terrible. Kizaru's eyes fell on Aokiji and his mouth whispered. Full of indifference, everyone knows that Z and Kizaru are the most disharmonious in the teacher-student relationship. If one day Kizaru accepts the task of killing Z everywhere, he will definitely execute it without mercy. That guy's body is almost indestructible. Be careful when you meet him. I heard that his strength is almost on par with the young Whitebeard. Kizaru's old face was cautious. Aokiji also nodded solemnly. The person who can cut off Z's arm is at least at the same level as them. In order to avoid repeating the tragedy of Z, Sengoku sent Aokiji and Kizaru at the same time. Only in this way can he feel confident. On the other side, the atmosphere was also very strange. Inside the luxurious villa, the lights were intertwined and colorful. The exquisite crystal chandelier was full of nobility. It was such a beautiful scene, but no one appreciated it. Instead, it was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Dustless was sitting on the sofa with a tranquil expression. His hands were carefully flipping through the books, and from time to time, he would lower his head and ponder. As for the bald Quelder stars in white Taoist robes, he had already put them aside. Back then, Dustless had used a scheme to steal the first-generation ghost blade from him, so they could be considered acquaintances. That guy is very stupid. He is the top fighting force that the government is looking for. In the future, we can even completely control him. It is unwise to kick him out of the position of Shichibukai. The bold Quelder Stars was dissatisfied. Because of Dustless's verbal order, their world government's plan, which had been painstakingly managed for a long time, collapsed in an instant. Hearing this, Dustless just raised his head and glanced at him faintly and continued to look down at the book. The content of the book was quite simple. It was the distribution and structure of the entire world's islands. But it looked more interesting than the old man's words. Louis South, please give me a reason that is enough to convince this old man. Seeing Dustless ignoring him one after another, the voice of the bald Quelder Stars was raised by several decibels, with a hint of anger. As one of the highest powers in the world, he was ignored by this kid. How can he feel good? Didn't I say, that's an order, there is no reason, an order is an order. Continuing to look down at the book, he didn't look up from the beginning to the end. The whisper sounded in the ears of the bald Quelder Stars. Dustless had a look of indifference. Although the Quelder Stars are actually the lackeys of the celestial dragons, the 5 of them are obviously complying with the celestial dragons. Realizing that their wings are hard, they want to abandon their master and fly alone. The old face of the bald Quelder Stars collapsed. He wanted to refute but was speechless. This ridiculous reason made him speechless because the law stipulates so. The celestial dragons are above all things in the world, and any law that binds human beings has no effect on them. Don't ask more, it is your duty to listen and execute. Touching the sides of his eyes, Dustless seemed a little tired. He waved his hand and asked them to leave. The bold Quelder Stars could only stare and leave. Master, you are too much of a bully. Seeing the maid of the bald Quelder-Stars leave, Hancock, dressed in a black maid dress, rushed out of the darkness, and her exquisite figure was vividly highlighted. She rubbed Dustless's shoulders very knowingly. "Do you think it's too much?" Dustless asked calmly. Hearing the words, Hancock gently nodded. This unreasonable bandit logic is completely suppressing people. Of course, Dustless's strength is also what the Quelder-Stars are most afraid of. The orders of the celestial dragons are never justified, they are just to satisfy their own selfish desires. Closing the book in his hand, Dustless said naturally. The celestial dragons are like this, orders are orders, they don't need any reason, they are only responsible for the execution. Dustless will not be bored enough to reason with the Quelder-Stars. He is completely relying on his superior identity to suppress people, even if they are not convinced, they can't do anything. Because the law made by the Quelder-Stars is based on the supremacy of the celestial dragons. You are forcing them. Hancock reminded him. A cornered dog would jump over a wall. One day in the future, it was possible that the 5 Elder Stars would do some crazy things if they were driven crazy. At least they are far from crazy now. Shrugging, Dustless said indifferently. Chapter 654. In this regard, Hancock can't deny that Mariewa Tenryubito temperament is like this. They do everything according to their own will, as for motivation, they don't need it at all. Through the balcony glass, seeing the bald Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, leaving in anger, Hancock couldn't help but sigh. To put it bluntly, they used their identity and status to suppress you, and there was nothing they could do about it. The celestial dragons were the biggest arbitrators in the world. Whoever he said was wrong was wrong. Reversing black and white, pointing a deer as a horse was what they were best at. It's useless to resist. After all, the world government and the Tenryubito behind the scenes have existed for more than 800 years. During this period, there have been countless rebellions, but they were all cruelly suppressed in the end. Even if the 5 honored stars refused to accept this, they would only make some small moves in private. If they brazenly went against them, only death would await them. In the future, Doflamingo, who has no rights, can make the world government hesitate. Dustless, who has great power, naturally makes the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, more afraid. In short, Z will eat this loss. Dustless whispered. An admiral of the Marine headquarters, his right arm was cut off. He is most proud of his superb armament hockey, so he also has the nickname Black Wrist. The blow to him can be imagined. Do you want to tame that old man? Dustless's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he suddenly had an idea in his heart. Regenerating a severed arm is a fantasy for others, but for him, it's a trivial matter. Dustless can even bring the dead back to life easily. It was because he promised Nico Robin to resurrect her mother that she obediently went to Dustless's ship. That stubborn old man, forget it. Shaking his head, Dustless immediately denied the idea. Rashly contacting Z will only bring shame to himself. Dustless has already heard of the old man's strict and stubborn temper, and he will certainly be rejected without hesitation and ridiculed. But then again, Akiji and Kizaru will join forces to deal with Edward Wilbur. Dustless's heart splashed with faint ripples. After a few seconds, it calmed down again. The generals joined forces to deal with Edward Wilbur. From this, one could see how strong Edward Wilbur was. His strength was enough to blow away a town, and his weapon was the same as Whitebeard's. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was Whitebeard's son. Hancock nodded. Fortunately, he was just a simple child. His wisdom was only as high as that of an 8 or 9-year-old child. Otherwise, the future, Yonko, might have changed. As for whether Akiji and Kizaru are opponents, Dustless doesn't know. Whoever lives or dies has nothing to do with him. The only thing he cares about is the position of Shichibukai. With the mentality of watching a play, let them make trouble. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had already passed. Dustless originally thought that the 5 elder stars were unwilling to give up and secretly use some small tricks. They had even made preparations for a follow-up move. However, the entire sea was calm and tranquil these days. Z's consciousness has awakened. In the Fleet Admiral's office, Sengoku breathed a sigh of relief. His pale face squeezed out a few far-fetched smiles. His eyes were cloudy and he looked very tired and listless. Before celebrating Z's recovery, I think you should thank me. Dustless's untimely whisper fell into everyone's ears and the atmosphere suddenly stiffened. Thank you. Sengoku wondered. If it wasn't for Dustless's interference, Edward Wilbur would have become Mashichibukai, and would be famous all over the world. I'm talking about other aspects. Looking at Sengoku's eyes, Dustless was sure that this old guy was thinking crooked. Then he shook his finger and said with deep meaning. These words made a group of Marine executives look at each other and they were confused. I mean, once Edward Weevil joins the 7 warlords of the sea, what do you think Z will do? Dustless went straight to the point. Sengoku's expression solidified. If it was before, he wouldn't doubt Z, but after several pirate attacks, Z's heart and will have slowly changed. Sengoku was sure that after Edward Wilbur became Mashichibukai, Z would leave the Marine and even stand on the opposite side of the entire Marine. Sengoku's heart was filled with emotions. His best friend who fought side by side with him may give up his former ties at any time for some reason and turn to stand on the opposite side. Don't you have to thank me, Sengoku. Seeing Sengoku wake up from his dream, Dustless said with a smile. Hearing this, Sengoku just raised his head and glanced at Dustless, then he simply ignored him. His eyes fell on Kizaru and Akiji. He frowned and asked, "You two joined forces and still let him run away?" Sengoku looked at Kizaru and Akiji. The 2 admirals joined forces and still let the enemy run away. Although they left him with wounds, it still didn't make sense. Akiji shrugged his shoulders and showed a helpless look. Edward Wilbur is an ability user and he has a strong healing ability. It's not easy to kill him. Even when Akiji and Kizaru fought, they cut off his arm but it was still strangely connected. This is bad luck. Sengoku's old face turned into a pig's liver color as he cursed in his heart. He originally expected to capture Edward Wilbur alive and kill him to avenge Z, but he didn't expect the kid's ability to be so strong and finally let him run away. Dustless sipped his tea quietly until the end of the meeting. He didn't speak as if he was just going through the motions. Now the 3 admirals are the pillars of the Marine. An outsider like him naturally doesn't need to interrupt. Life or death doesn't matter to him. He is just a bystander. After the situation derails, he will lead him back to the track he set. Chapter 655. For the hatred between pirates and Marines, Dustless is not interested in participating. 2 crows standing on the coal, no one is black, pirates are not good things, sometimes Marines also subdue bandits. Even if Edward Wilbur really joins the 7 warlords of the sea, Sensei will not leave Marine. Don't forget, he has dedicated his life to Marine. Marine is all he has, it is his family. Akiji stood up and said loudly. This remark attracted everyone's agreement and they nodded. Z has fought countless pirates in his life, but never killed any enemy. He is known as the former admiral of the Marine headquarters. He can be so kind to the enemy, he must be very loving to his own people. That was before. Raising his eyelids and looking at Akiji carefully, Dustless whispered, from the time his wife and children were killed, Z had an unforgettable resentment against pirates, but he forced himself to suppress it. There is one more thing. Akiji's calm face was high and he sneered. The whole Marine status is equivalent to Z's family, but one day, these family members betrayed and abandoned him, with his enemies. What do you think will happen? As soon as Wu Chen finished speaking, the scene instantly went deathly silent like water, perfectly silent, and it was like a club that struck everyone awake from their muddle-headedness. Why did Z betray and leave the Marine? It was completely because he was forced out. So the key factor is not Z, but the strategy of the government and Sengoku. This. Akiji's face was stiff and the words on his mouth stopped. If he has been loyal to the existence of the Marine and one day betrayed and abandoned him, Akiji will not be relieved. At that time, maybe he will leave the Marine and even stand on the opposite side of the Marine is not impossible. Today's meeting is over. Seeing that there is no reason to discuss, Sengoku was annoyed and directly ended the meeting. But there is one thing that Sengoku can be sure of: if it wasn't for Dushless, Z would definitely leave the Marine. He was more or less grateful to Wu Chen, even though he knew that Wu Chen didn't have good intentions. The Marines looked at each other and left the conference room. No one dared to provoke the angry fleet admiral, so they all left quietly. In the huge conference room, there were only a few people left. Looking around, they were all the backbone of the Marine, belonging to the mainstay type. Bastard, that Edward Weevil was instigated by someone else to ambush Z. Seeing everyone leave, Sengoku yelled. In fact, the Navy had noticed his existence before, but at that time Edward Weevil's wisdom was similar to that of a few years old child, and he was not a pirate at that time. Therefore, he was muddling along, and now he suddenly attacked the Marine. Obviously there was someone behind the scenes. Is it Whitebeard? Dustless nodded. The attack on Z's ship was indeed orchestrated by someone behind the scenes. The first person he thought of was Whitebeard. After a moment of silence, he directly ignored him. Other people can sneak attack Whitebeard, but Whitebeard won't sneak attack others. Instigating others to sneak attack Z, Whitebeard can't pull down his face. Forget it, there is one more thing, it is necessary to remind you. Sengoku said cautiously. The New World's Yonko, for emperors, have been recuperating for several years, and their strength is not far from the original, and even better than their heyday. How is that possible? Wasn't Kaido's fleet almost annihilated? Garp asked in surprise. Akainu, Akiji, and Kizaru all cast a puzzled look, because the initiator of this incident was Dushless, and only a small number of elites escaped with Kaido. To reorganize the fleet not only requires a lot of money, but also countless manpower. It is impossible to improve the fleet in just a few years. There was a flash of hesitation in his eyes. Sengoku's tone was gloomy. I don't know the specific situation, I don't know where he collected the devil fruit and formed a legion of Zoan ability users. Legion. Hearing this, Garp and the three admirals' faces were extremely ugly. It is enough to see how many people there are in a legion, at least more than 3 digits. No wonder Kaido's strength has been expanding recently, and he even formed a devil fruit army. It is estimated that the source is Doflamingo's artificial devil fruit. Dustless guessed. Although Kaido and Doflamingo had a grudge before, under the absolute interests, everything can be done without hindrance. But that kid is still bad enough. Now the artificial devil fruit developed by Caesar is a failure, and he actually sold it to Kaido. Today's failed products are good, close to the finished product, but the effect is like a stimulant. After a period of time, the body will be sluggish, and the side effect is life. By the way, what about the Akagami, red hair, pirates? Dustless asked after thinking for a while. Sengoku picked up the confidential document in his hand, and after reading it carefully, he cautiously said, there is a secret message that points out that Akagami, red hair, is very strong, and it is likely that he is the most difficult Yonko, for emperors, to deal with besides Whitebeard. After that, Sengoku handed the document in his hand to the goat, and the latter bleated a few times and swallowed it. Dustless saw a few important words above, Akagami, red hair. Shanks went to the Sabaody archipelago. What is his purpose in going to the Sabaody archipelago to find Rayleigh? Dustless secretly thought. Akagami, red hair, is slightly stronger than Rayleigh, whose body is getting worse year by year. For no reason, he went around half of the world and went to the Sabaody archipelago to meet him. Both Rayleigh and Akagami, red hair, Shanks are astute people, and Akagami, red hair, came all the way to the Sabaody archipelago. It is definitely not as simple as drinking wine. Chapter 656. After thinking about it for a while, Wu Qin, who couldn't figure out the reason, was not entangled. Any conspiracy in the face of absolute strength was deceiving oneself and others. Only the fist was the absolute truth. Everything else was not important. However, I'll just let you guys do whatever you want. Make a mess of this world and then I'll appear as the world's savior. To stand up after destruction, this is also in line with my plan. Wu Qin muttered to himself indifferently like a cool breeze. Although the current situation is contrary to what he originally expected, the ultimate goal is still the same. How is the body transformation of the tyrant bear? Sengoku's sudden words immediately attracted Dustless's attention. Vegapunk is not simple, he can use mechanization to control the bear. Dustless nodded silently. Bear's brain has been changed and replaced by various machines and various chips. Dustless's previous tricks on him also mean that they have lost their effect. His brain has been replaced by some chips and various instruments. During this period, Dustless tried to control him again, but it ended in failure. The current progress is going well. Kazara's face changed slightly, and he seemed to remember the unbearable past. Since he wants to install a beam on the humanoid weapon, sometimes, he will need Kazara to be a white mouse. Dustless smiled when he saw this, he could understand Kazara's difficulties. A Marine Admiral will sometimes be placed on the operating table, and it really has nothing to do with face. After about half an hour, Dustless and others left one after another. In the empty conference room, only Sengoku was left. A month later, the bright morning sun tilted thousands of miles and sprinkled all over the world. My hockey is still not enough. After returning to Mariewa, Dustless began to train himself crazily. Without relying on Hokage's power, he could barely be equal to a Kainu in terms of the world's native power. For about a month, Dustless had been training himself. Moreover, this training lasted as long as a few years. In the brightly lit room, the little girl, who looked like she was carved out of jade, was jumping around happily. Her pair of deep black eyes sparkled like agates, and her delicate face was like the work of the gods. Yuki, if I remember correctly, you are 11 years old, but you are still alive and don't know etiquette. Dustless, who was sitting on the sofa and reading the newspaper, scolded. A few years have slipped away, but the years have not left obvious traces on his body. It's none of your business. Anyway, what you say doesn't count. Making a funny face at Wu Qin, Yushi's bell-like laughter continued. Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Yuki often lives in the system space with Kagaya, so she is extremely dependent on her, and Kagaya is extremely doting on her only daughter. Thus, it also caused Wu Qin to have no right to speak. Whatever he said, this little girl would disregard it and adopt a perfunctory attitude. Come here. His face was slightly cold. Taking advantage of the fact that Huiji was not here today, Wu Qin planned to teach this little girl how to respect her teacher. In the past, every time he wanted to deal with this little girl, Huiji would always stop him. Yuki was obviously not an ordinary person. She inherited the bloodline of Kagaya and Dustless at the same time, and her ability index in all aspects was reported. Boom! Accompanied by a dull sound, the dazzling sunlight suddenly shone in. Yuki didn't even open the door and simply broke out of the wall. Master, how many times has Miss done this? Hancock's face was full of helplessness, and she was speechless about the father and daughter. This is also a free vent, the comfortable sea breeze came through the hole. Dustless took a deep breath, and his whole person felt much more relaxed, as if he was walking in the clouds. Looking carefully, Dustless and the others were on a fully equipped yacht. There were very few people on such a large yacht, and they only casually brought a few attendants, not even a bodyguard. "Dead father, come and see what I got." Yukishi's crisp childish voice resounded through his ears. Dustless just helplessly shook his head and sighed. He had corrected Yukishi countless times, but this little girl still called him that. She even directly called Dustless by his name. "This is all your fault, master." Hancock rolled her eyes. Dustless didn't deny it. He really didn't accompany Yukishi for a long time, and these days he was very idle, so he wanted to take her to the East China Sea to play, which could be regarded as a kind of alternative compensation. His body turned into a breeze, and in an instant he came to Yukishi's side. "It's just a broken bucket, what's there to be surprised about? There's someone inside." Even Dustless, who was accustomed to storms, couldn't help but be stunned at this moment. On the endless sea, there was no sign of life for hundreds of kilometers. Could it be? This strange way of drifting made Dustless suddenly think of a person. After so many years, he should also go to the sea, but Dustless didn't expect such a coincidence. And he was caught by his daughter. "I'm really sorry, I encountered a shipwreck on the first day of going to the sea." A handsome boy came out of the wooden bucket, and the face that came into view was the face in Dustless's memory, wearing a plain straw hat, with a sunny smile on his face, and an optimistic attitude. In the dark, Dustless also seemed to be influenced. The chill in his heart was swept away, and his eyes looked at the naive boy in front of him. In the future, he would turn the whole world upside down. "Monchi Luffy." Dustless subconsciously called out the boy's name. Luffy heard the name and stared at Dustless's calm face, and curiously asked, "You know me?" His black eyes widened, as if he had seen a ghost, scrutinizing Dustless, and subconsciously took a step back. He lived in Windmill Town since he was a child, and his mind was simple. The people who knew Luffy were limited to the people inside, and he didn't have any interaction with the people in the outside world. "I barely know you, but your grandfather Garp and I are colleagues," Dustless said indifferently. Chapter 657. Luffy's eyes widened. When he mentioned the word Garp, his eyes were filled with fear. He had goosebumps all over his body as if he had met the devil. Wuchin could even see his exposed shivering hairs. This kid is surprisingly afraid of Garp, but it seems that he doesn't know anything. Seeing Luffy looking at him blankly, Dustless guessed. Shanks obviously didn't tell him that Dustless had taken over Luffy's body. Maybe this is what people call fate. Staring at Luffy's face, Dustless felt dull. Just for a moment, he lost interest in Luffy. Dustless carefully scrutinized Luffy in front of him. To be honest, Dustless didn't feel anything special about him. Only his sunny smiling face was quite approachable. At first glance, he could tell that he was the kind of person who liked to be familiar with others. "Do you want to kill him now to solve the big problem?" White Zetsu quietly came over with a fierce look in his eyes. "As long as Monchi Luffy is killed now, he will be free in the future. Is there a reason to kill him now?" Dustless asked noncommittally, his voice always remained indifferent. "Because he is the sea." The words on the tip of his tongue stopped abruptly. White Zetsu suddenly realized that Luffy had just gone to sea and had no bounty, so he was not a pirate. A child who likes to fantasize, there is no need to make it so exaggerated. Glancing at White Zetsu, Dustless said. "A teenager, no matter how strong he is, it is impossible for him to have the strength to threaten him in the future." Looking at Luffy who was talking with his daughter, Dustless smiled and didn't say anything to disturb them. Perhaps because they are of the same age, it is easier to communicate. Seeing Dustless so determined, White Zetsu couldn't speak. After all, he was created by Dustless. Indeed, as Dustless said, a person has a limit. No one can grow endlessly, including Dustless himself. Master, it's not good to let a stranger on the boat. Hancock frowned and whispered. The human heart was unfathomable. In this day and age, there were countless hungry wolves that ate people without spitting out the bones. Do you think he can beat me? Glancing at Hancock, Dustless asked with interest. Hearing this, Boa Hancock resolutely shook her head and opened her mouth. Seeing that Dustless's face still remained calm, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. If they wanted to harm Dustless, they had to at least have the strength to defeat him. The next morning, the morning breeze blew and the sparkling surface of the sea was covered with a layer of dazzling gold. Dustless casually found an island with living people and threw Luffy off. This was also his own request. Luffy had been clamoring for companions, which annoyed Dustless to no end. He might as well throw him out and let him fend for himself. Hey, you haven't told me your name yet. In the future, I will repay you when I become famous all over the world. On the bustling dock, Luffy waved his fist and shouted at the luxurious ship docked at the shore. On the ship, a figure with an expressionless face, hands in trouser pockets, looked down at Luffy indifferently and said, "You don't need to know my name. It will only make you despair. Ignorance is also a kind of happiness. Sometimes knowing too much will make you feel pain." After that, Dustless's body suddenly lost its texture, like an afterimage, he floated away. In the vast sky, only Dustless's cold voice echoed. The next time we meet, maybe we will be enemies. Luffy stood in place with a sluggish face. He was confused by Dustless's words. Perhaps because of his optimistic attitude, Luffy once again showed a sunny smile, full of cheerfulness. Little did he know that a figure in the darkness had coincidentally witnessed this scene. When he saw Luffy leave, the black figure hesitated for a moment before following him. On the endless sea, monstrous ripples were set off, and looking closely, a large ship was moving forward rapidly. Looking at the sea ahead, his deep eyes were full of indescribable magic. Seeing through layers of space, Luffy's past and future appeared in Dustless's eyes. "Master, Vice Admiral Garp is on the phone." Hancock handed over the Den Mushi that was used to communicate with Garp. "The fishman named Arlong, you should have an impression of him. He was the fishman who attacked Mariewa before. Later, Jinbe became one of the Shichibukai and bailed him out, but that kid's temperament did not change and he is still a pirate." On the other side of the Den Mushi came Garp's old but full of energy voice. Hearing this, Dustless suddenly understood what the old man was thinking. He wanted him to clean up Arlong. "I have left East Blue and now I am on the way back to Mariewa. Someone else will deal with Arlong." Dustless refused righteously. Someone else. Garp was stunned when he heard this. East Blue is the weakest sea area of the four seas. Arlong is the local snake there and he is also a little famous figure. Few people in East Blue dare to offend him. That's right. And you know this person. You're very familiar with him. Wu Qin said with a smile. His tone carried a hint of bad intentions. Garp, who was far away in Marlin, was confused. He was only familiar with Windmill Town in the East Sea, and with the strength of that group of people, they could do things like plundering and robbing, but as for challenging Arlong of the Fishman race, they were still far too weak. After thinking for a long time, Garp barely thought of a figure in his mind and his old face suddenly turned green. "Is it Luffy?" Garp's old face was twitching and countless crows floated over his head. He felt that his eyelids were twitching and it was definitely not a good thing. He didn't expect the reason to be Luffy. "The bloodline of your Monchi family is unbelievably strong." Dustless recognized Garp's answer in disguise and was filled with emotion. Garp is a marine hero. He has driven Roger to desperation several times, making him world famous. His son Dorag is known as the world's most ferocious criminal. As for Luffy, the rising star, he will not be worse than the previous two in the future. Chapter 658. Garp's old face was black. He was about to stuff the seashell into his mouth. He ignored it and roared angrily. Luffy, this old man will let you taste my iron fist. Garp said angrily. Akagami, yes, it must be Akagami. Thinking of the straw hat on Luffy's head, Garp's face couldn't help but be gloomy. In the eyes of the Marines, that is the symbol of evil inheritance. Roger passed it to Akagami, and Akagami transferred it to Luffy. How can Garp not be angry? No, you just said that it is possible, not certain. Garp said anxiously. It may mean that it hasn't happened yet, and it also means that Luffy is not a pirate for the time being. I advise you to give up, Garp. Dustless shook his head. He had a deeper understanding of Garp's stubbornness. This is the general trend, it can't be stopped. Perhaps God has already defined it, and even if Garp goes to the East Blue to find Luffy, it will be too late. Garp's face was ashen, and then he shouted with dissatisfaction, You should have touched Luffy. How can you catch him? This old man will let him taste my iron fist. The sky is high for the birds to fly, the sea is wide for the fish to jump. Capturing that brat Luffy is of no use, unless you tie his 4 limbs to Shanglo Shi and lock him by your side for the rest of his life. Dustless said indifferently like a cool breeze. Luffy's character is more stubborn than Garp. If you want to persuade him to give up being a pirate, you might as well kill him directly. Don't think too much. Yes, he went to be a pirate. Dustless said. Garp's face was full of loneliness, his whole body was full of sadness. He suddenly felt that his life was full of irony. His son, his grandson, and his adopted grandson all stood on the opposite side of the marine. How he felt in his heart can be imagined. Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense with the sad Garp. He can only say that the genes are too crazy, they are too attached to the so-called freedom. In the vast sea, on a luxurious yacht, Dustless lazily soaked in the pool, very comfortable. Plop, not knowing how much time had passed, the sound of something falling into the water, which was so soft that it could be ignored, entered Wu Chen's ears. Even though he kept it light and careful, it still woke up Wu Chen, who was half asleep. Suddenly opened his eyes, his black eyes showing a sharp edge. He said coldly, Get dressed, now get out. You should know that I don't like to repeat things twice. A chilling light flashed in his cold eyes, and what he saw was none other than Yushi, whose clothes were barely covering her body. Dustless's face, his eyes turned red, his eyes turned blood red, the evil luster enough to distort time and to devour everything. Ah, ah. She was so scared by Wu Chen's murderous aura that her face turned as pale as paper. Her beautiful face trembled. 2 lines of tears flowed from her beautiful eyes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with confusion. Seeing this scene, Dustless's heart was touched, his cold face loosened, the killing intent surging all over his body also disappeared. There was a little self-blame in his eyes. He felt that he owed this child too much. In the system's inner world, Yushi was alone. After all, in the system, except for women, there were also women. Some secular morals can be ignored, but the world outside the system is very different. With a gentle wave of her hand, Dustless's body was covered by a bright white coat. Yushi was also covered by it. Master. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop, miss. She said that in the other world, everyone was like this. A burst of messy footsteps sounded. Hancock was panting. Yushi inherited the bloodline of Dustless and Kagaya. Naturally, she also inherited some ninjutsu. It was normal for Hancock to not be able to chase after people. It's okay, let's sit down together. Shaking his head, Dustless took Yushi to a special chair and began to teach her how to be a man. First of all, and the most important point, you can't lose anything, and you can't compromise, because compromise is a disguised form of admitting defeat. Hancock's face was full of expectation. She thought she could hear the truth of life. but she didn't expect it to be a dirty trick. She could only smile bitterly, this father and daughter pair's thinking, ordinary people can't keep up. She didn't talk nonsense, and slowly listened, although these tricks are despicable, but they are good, and people can't find an excuse to refute. Well, it's really annoying, it seems like I'm back to the original place. Luffy blinked his eyes and looked around the environment, repeating a dozen times, it was still the same. Needless to say, he was lost, and it was a dead end. When he was about to turn around and leave, a black shadow roared, the speed was extremely fast, and it disappeared in a flash. Bang! Caw caw caw. Luffy was caught off guard and was instantly knocked out, leaving a big hole in the wall. Luffy was lying in it. Who the hell are you, bastard? Luffy, who recovered from his shock, said. The tall man in front of him was wearing a green headscarf and carrying a sharp tachi on his back. When the sword was unsheathed, he felt a sharp feeling on his back. I thought that the one who came with the Marine Admiral was a master, but it turned out to be this kind of roadside trash. Looking closely, this person was the popular pirate hunter Roland Zoro. Zoro glanced at Luffy. Just as he was about to leave, Luffy stood up with a cold look in his eyes. Oh, do you still have the strength to continue fighting? Your will is good, I take back what I just said. Seeing Luffy's ferocious eyes, Zoro was not afraid but happy. Zoro was originally a battle-hungry beast, and now Luffy's state was in his heart. The beast that likes to fight desperately also loves this feeling of blood. Dustless, who was far away on the sea, didn't know that his careless mistake would make Zoro and Luffy meet in advance, and the scene was also very different. Chapter 659. Luffy stared at Zoro, and the cold light in his eyes was clear, as if it could penetrate the void, like an eagle. Hey, you, what is a Marine Admiral? You can't eat it. Why are you looking for me? Pointing at Zoro, Luffy asked angrily. Luffy, who has lived in the Windmill Village since he was a child, is innocent in nature. Not to mention what Dustless does, he doesn't even know what his grandfather does. Idiot, what's the use of deceiving yourself, I still won't let you go. With a sneer, Zoro thought that Luffy was talking nonsense. Does this damn bastard think I'm an idiot? Zoro was so angry that he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Decades ago, Dustless, as the youngest admiral in history, was already famous all over the world, respected by the world, and became a hot topic all over the world. Coming on a Marine Admiral's ship, but you don't know who he is? Who are you kidding? Zoro took these words as a lie, and there was a sense of humiliation, and at the same time, he looked at Luffy's eyes more ferociously. A cold murderous aura broke out of his body, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped. Tiger Hunt. He raised his hand and slashed down with his saber. An awe-inspiring and domineering slash was launched. It tore a deep crack in the ground. Then, a dense mass of black rushed towards Luffy. Don't take it. Luffy's pupils suddenly shrank when he saw this. He was a rubber man and could resist most physical attacks, but being hit by this kind of weapon, it was inevitable that his head would bleed. Even his life was in danger, so he didn't think about it and immediately moved away. Poochie. At the moment of swallowing Luffy, his body had turned into an afterimage. Sure enough, it seems to be a good practice opponent. Zoro's eyes suddenly lit up, and his hands holding the tachi trembled with excitement. Instead of feeling fear, he was full of fighting spirit. After wandering in the East China Sea for many years, he was eager to fight with the strong. Whiz! His feet slammed on the ground, and Zoro swept out like a cannonball. His speed was no worse than Luffy's, and his eyes were like a raging beast. Stop, you bastard! Seeing this, Luffy hurriedly shouted. At the same time, he could not help but feel a sense of depression that he had never felt before. Not only was he attacked when he came to this strange island, he even got lost more than 10 times and was attacked by this fierce swordsman in front of him. The cause is the Marine Admiral. Luffy said that he really doesn't understand. Clang! Casually picking up a broken steel pipe to temporarily resist Zoro's ferocious offensive, Luffy looked at Zoro's ferocious face and took the opportunity to ask, "Tell me what that Marine Admiral is." Boom! Hearing this, Zoro's eyes became colder and colder, and the strength in his hand increased by 30%. He instantly forced Luffy back, and the latter crashed heavily into the wall. What kind of monster is this guy? His expression froze. He pretended as if nothing had happened, but his heart was in turmoil. Even if Luffy's physique was astonishing, his skin should at least have some abrasions. Now that he had forced him to retreat twice in a row, he was still unscathed. He was full of energy. Marine Admiral. That's the top fighting power of the Marine. Thinking of the Admiral's figure, the killing intent in Zoro's eyes gradually extinguished, and there was a touch of fanaticism. His goal is to catch up with the Admiral's figure and then reach the position of the world's greatest swordsman. Top fighting power, is it strong? Is it as strong as One Piece? Luffy asked innocently while touching his chin. For the outside world, he was serious and blank. He only had a little impression of Garp when he was a child because he spent his childhood in Fengche Town. Nonsense, of course it's strong. As for One Piece, at this point, Zoro's words stopped in his mouth. He didn't know, after all, the two sides haven't fought. It's none of your business whether One Piece or Admiral is strong or weak, fight seriously for me. Seeing Luffy sitting directly on the ground modestly, Zoro shouted. Of course it matters, I'm the man who wants to be the Pirate King! Raising his arm, Luffy's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he said confidently. Hearing this, Zoro suddenly froze, looking at Luffy like an idiot, with some doubts in his eyes. He seemed to wonder why Dustless didn't catch this boy who likes to dream. Looking at the whole world, there are 3 positions for Marine Admiral, but there is only one position for the Pirate King, which shows how fierce the competition is. And compared with Luffy, who knows nothing about the outside world, Zoro's vision is much broader. This is only the weakest East Blue of the 4 seas. There are many pirates in the New World, and they are at the bottom of the New World. It sounds like a fantasy, but the facts are undeniable. Maybe he's too young, and there's no bounty. Staring at the confident Luffy, Zoro secretly guessed. His eyes became cold again, and he pressed towards Luffy without mercy. Hey! You, I haven't asked clearly, why are you attacking again? Luffy roared. Whiz! Zoro's eyes became more indifferent. He was speechless about Luffy's idiocy, and it was useless to say more. I don't know how strong an admiral is. But that man, thinking of Dustless's figure, Zoro's heart was silent. Other people in their 40s or 50s can become an admiral, but how old is Dustless now? And he was an admiral decades ago. As the saying goes, capable people do more work. Maybe because he is too strong, he can serve as an admiral of Marine headquarters at a young age. I don't know what that guy's name is. It seems that few people in the world know his real name, and he doesn't have a nickname, because he rarely fights, and his enemies who have seen him are either caught or dead. Invincible's attack suddenly stopped. Zoro looked at Luffy's innocent eyes and said, even so, some people in the world still gave him a title. The youngest and most powerful admiral in history. Chapter 660. Luffy was confused. Although he didn't understand what Zoro meant, to make such an Iron Man full of fear and fanaticism, Zoro must not be an ordinary person. That gigolo is actually so powerful. Luffy suddenly said with an expression that said, I understand. Luffy seemed to be surprised that Dustless was as powerful as Zoro said. Luffy opened his mouth exaggeratedly, and his stunned expression was quite comical. Seeing this, Zoro's eyes became cold. He raised his arm and waved his hand, and an unparalleled slash was sent out. The target was Luffy, who was in a daze. Before the slash arrived, a cold chill enveloped Luffy's body. Luffy's body shivered uncontrollably, and he quickly responded. Whoosh! His arm extended without limit, and he grabbed the railing in the distance and flew over instantly. Is this guy a legendary ability user? Zoro's eyes widened, and he was surprised. Although he had heard of the legend of Devil Fruit ability users before, this was the first time he encountered one, and he couldn't help but be surprised. Remembering that Luffy was fine when he was attacked, he suddenly felt relieved. In the eyes of ordinary people, Devil Fruit ability users were synonymous with mystery. But this is for the best. He is more worthy to be my opponent. Excitement appeared in Zoro's clear eyes. The muscles between Zoro's legs tightened, and he chased after Luffy with all his strength. His cold eyes clearly saw Luffy as a prey within reach. Hey, hey, hey. I don't have a deep hatred with you. You don't have to be so desperate. Seeing that Zoro was not going to act until he was certain, Luffy couldn't help but yell. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. A duel between swordsmen doesn't require hatred. If I want to, I will pursue. Zoro rushed over madly with his sword, and a storm was set off behind him. It was obvious how exaggerated his speed was, and he left a mark on the ground. Seeing this, Luffy's eyes lit up, and he realized that Zoro was not a weak opponent. I have no reason to fight with you. Luffy still yelled. His tone was somewhat different from his usual self. It gave people the feeling of a hunter looking at his prey. That's your business. Zoro snorted and didn't care. Bang! Luffy, who was galloping, suddenly stopped and landed on the ground like a cannonball. He raised a cloud of dust as he looked at Zoro. I can fight you, but if you lose, you have to become my companion. Lowering the brim of his hat, Luffy's bright and spirited eyes were filled with confidence. It was the complete opposite of his previous restrained sharpness. Now, he was like a peerless weapon that had been unsheathed. His threatening gaze made people not dare to look straight at him. Companions. It seemed that this was the first time Zoro had heard such a strange word. Zoro's footsteps suddenly stopped, and he lowered his head to think. He was a little tempted by Luffy's proposal. The East Sea was the smallest sea region and was publicly acknowledged as the weakest sea region in the four seas. Buzz buzz buzz, the rune on his waist suddenly trembled and let out a clear cry. It was filled with hot-blooded intent. Seeing this, Zoro was moved. The hesitation in his eyes turned into determination. This was the sword of his best friend. Zoro once swore that one day in the future, he would become the world's #1 swordsman. Guina's dream was to become the world's #1. Why not? I'm not scared of you. Since you can defeat me, I'll do as you wish. Zoro tied his headscarf with a cold light flashed in his eyes. His aura was raised to the extreme. Unlike the previous small fight, he was ready to face Luffy. Zoro was deeply touched by Luffy's confidence. If this guy really had the ability to defeat him, he would accompany him to explore the new world. After all, staying in the East Sea was the weakest place in the world. Seeing this, Luffy's smile turned into a real action. His body instantly disappeared and turned into a flash of lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Zoro. He completely ignored the definition of distance. In the blink of an eye. That monkey D, Luffy is exactly the same as Dustless Sama's description. White Zetsu, who was observing the situation from afar, said in disbelief. Although Luffy had always acted like a careless person, but now that he lured Zoro into his trap, it was obvious that he was a smart person. Although sometimes Luffy was an idiot, or naive, he was actually a very shrewd person. Small things were blurred, but in reality, he couldn't tolerate sand in his eyes. White Zetsu took a deep look at the two people who were passionately colliding. Dustless of Mariehua was still waiting for his other news. In the luxurious bedroom, the lights were bright and luxurious. Dustless, who came back from the East Sea, was tired. First, he lay in bed and slept for a long time. Then, he read the newspaper day after day. Then, he listened to White Zetsu's report. In the evening, he would occasionally go for a walk. For more than 10 years, it had become a daily routine. After about half an hour, White Zetsu emerged from the ground and looked at Dustless, who was relaxing on the sofa. He just stood aside and didn't speak. "Did you find out the source?" After an unknown period of time, Wuchen opened his eyes and asked calmly with an awe-inspiring luster. "Yes, I found out." Hearing this, White Zetsu nodded. After several years of hard work, he finally found the source of the news. "Take back the dark fruit by all means," Dustless said. About 10 years ago, Dustless used the dark fruit to successfully provoke the war between the Bigumam pirates and the Whitebeard pirates. Although it was finally eaten by Baron Eggy of the Bigumam pirates, the whereabouts of the fruit were unknown after Hawkeye successfully killed Baron Eggy. It wasn't until today that traces of it were found. The dark fruit seems to be useless to Dustless-sama. White Zetsu wondered. Dustless's strength was obvious to all, and the dark fruit was just icing on the cake. Its role was actually minimal and completely dispensable. "It's useless to me, but it's useful to others." The dark fruit can make people a peerless powerhouse, but it can also make people a drowned rat. Chapter 661. There are two sides to everything. If you can use it well, you will naturally benefit yourself. If you don't use it well, you will only hurt yourself. "Where is it?" Dustless asked with interest. White Zetsu's face flashed a little helplessness when he heard the words. It may be a relationship of cause and effect. It is unexpected that it would fall into anyone's hands. His pale face was full of embarrassment. "Speak quickly." Dustless frowned and said coldly. He cursed in his heart. If it wasn't for White Zetsu, who was personally created by him, he could be absolutely trusted. If it was someone else, he might have been blown to pieces many years ago. Thinking of this, Wuchen suddenly remembered the target of obtaining the devil fruit in the original work. 4th Division Captain Thatch. Blackbeard knew that after Thatch got the dark fruit, he finally killed and robbed the devil fruit. Therefore, he was wanted by the Whitebeard pirates and had to join the evil forces of Shichibukai. Did it fall into the hands of Blackbeard? Dustless's brows were slightly raised and his tone was a little colder. The warm room suddenly turned gloomy, and a bone-chilling cold descended. "That's not it. He doesn't have such good luck." White Zetsu shook his head. "Blackbeard is already witty enough. It's really unfair for God to be so good to him." It fell into the hands of the 2nd Division captain, that is, Fire Fist Ace. White Zetsu told the truth. Some things have their own destiny. In the original work, it was the 4th Division Captain Thatch who got it, but now it has become Fire Fist Ace. Fire Fist Ace. Isn't that the little brat who wanted to take my head? In his mind, the kid he met in Windmill Town suddenly appeared. Dustless had a playful smile on his mouth. Just a few years ago, he quickly became popular throughout the sea. After challenging Shichibukai Jinbi, he challenged and attacked Whitebeard hundreds of times. As a result, he was caught every time. However, the heroic Whitebeard let him go with a bounty of 550 million berries. Maybe Whitebeard knew that he was Roger's son and showed mercy. Dustless whispered softly. But in any case, it doesn't matter now. Dustless coldly said, "Fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. But this time, it might be a misfortune instead of a blessing for you." White Zetsu nodded and fell into the hands of the Whitebeard pirates. This was not the beginning of luck, but the beginning of disaster. Immediately investigate the whereabouts of Fire Fist Ace. Once you've figured it out, report it to me immediately. Dustless said coldly, a sinister aura surging from between his brows. Towards a person who tried every means to kill him, Dustless would not be soft-hearted and lenient. Leniency was only limited to people who were sincere towards Dustless. Fire Fist Ace was not in this range. Even if he had some friendship with Garp, he could not understand. Public and private matters should be clearly distinguished. White Zu nodded. Since it was Dustless's choice, he would absolutely respect it. This was the essence of existence. Then, like a ghost, he drilled into the depths of the ground. "Father, who are you going to cheat again? Take me with you." "Okay." There was a burst of spatial fluctuations around him, and Yushi came out of it, rubbing against Dustless's face, smiling coquettishly, her eyes full of desire. "This. Okay, but you can't make trouble for me, or I will immediately throw you to your mother." Dustless nodded and agreed to Yushi's coquettishness. In fact, he was also worried. Mariewa Gorosei, 5 elder stars, are not good things. Leaving Yushi alone in Mariewa is tantamount to putting her into the mouth of a tiger or wolf. Although this little girl is talented, her actual combat experience is 0, and Kagaya has never taught her ninjutsu. Dustless is the same. Although he knows some ninjutsu, most of them are fancy and so on. Whether they are reliable in actual combat or not, only God knows. And more because of guilt, Dustless also wants to spend more time with her, which can be regarded as making up for the little regret in his heart. Although Fire Fist Ace has a bounty of 550 million berries, he can't make big waves. Father is the best. Seeing this, little Yushi smiled and gently pecked Dustless's face, giggling, singing, laughing, dancing, and laughing very happily. Dustless's mouth also swept a faint smile. It is enough to make his daughter happy. In fact, Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and Blackbeard, as well as Fire Fist Ace, are not important, anyway, they are just props for fun. When he is in a good mood, he might as well play with them, but when he is in a bad mood, they are just a punching bag, that's all. This little girl has been too idle recently, I have to teach her some self-defense techniques. Dustless secretly decided in his heart. Yushi inherited the physique of Dustless and Kagaya, as well as the unprecedented huge chakra. Dustless does not expect Yushi to be a strong help in the future, at least she can protect herself. The strength of several women in the system's inner world has been greatly improved. During this period, Dustless has collected many devil fruits and gave them to eat one by one. The light fruit that was previously extracted by the system was given to Kagaya to use, and it is also one of the ultimate devil fruits. Its power is peerless, and after decades of use, Kagaya has already exerted its power to the extreme. As for the other women, Dustless is naturally prepared and has aimed at a lot of powerful fruits. His confidence, the devil fruit ability is naturally second to none. It is impossible to make up the numbers. Father, I also want a devil fruit. Yushi, who was rolling in Dustless's arms, blinked her eyes and said with a hopeful tone. What type do you want? Rubbing the little girl's hair, Dustless asked calmly. Yushi tilted her head, making a thoughtful look, and then her eyes flashed. The ability of that guy called Monchi D. Luffy is good. Puff! Hearing this, the tea that Dustless sent to his mouth instantly burst out, and he looked at Yushi with a strange face. This is obviously hinting that Dustless killed Luffy. Chapter 662. Time flew by and 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. Dustless came to the bustling island according to White Setsu's information and swept straight from the shore. The bustling crowd was clearly visible. Will there be traces of Ace in such a bustling city? Yushi took Dustless's hand and stared at him with childlike eyes and asked doubtfully. It should be. The source of White Setsu's information has always been accurate and there is rarely any deviation. Dustless nodded softly. Although he also had doubts, White Setsu has never made a mistake, this is an unquestionable fact. Let's go and see. Patting Yushi on the shoulder, Dustless smiled. Little Yushi nodded and followed Dustless into the street. Facing the dazzling goods on both sides of the street, Yushi, who entered the city, was immediately dazzled, looking at Dustless with watery eyes full of desire. This little girl, just pick two things. Father is here to do business. Dustless helplessly scratched Yushi's nose and smiled. Little Yushi nodded her head excitedly like a chicken pecking rice, then broke away from Dustless's arms and rushed into the crowd. Shopping in the supermarket seems to be a woman's nature in any world, even children are the same. After half an hour, the shopping spree was over. When he ran out of the crowd, Wu Chen was already carrying countless bags of various sizes. Is this what you call 2 or 3 things? Dustless rolled his eyes, his face was depressed, looking at the 3 lives. It was the first time he became someone else's follower. Little Yushi just looked at Dustless with a grimace, then held the candy in her hand and jumped happily. Watching Dustless, who was following her, was speechless. His eyes turned sharply and he used kamui to swallow the big and small bags. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. If Obito knew, he would probably jump out of hell. Looking straight at Yushi in front, Dustless also followed. Perhaps the father and daughter were born with a bad sense of direction. After searching for an afternoon, they didn't find any trace of the Whitebeard pirates. They didn't even see the shadow of a pirate. As dusk approached, Dustless could not help but call out Setsu. Those guys are very sneaky. They secretly trade devil fruits. Ace is lucky to have encountered the dark fruit, White Jew said in a serious tone. The Whitebeard pirates are extremely powerful. Do they need to do devil fruit business? Little Moon, she wondered. Baizu just looked at Dustless. What he meant was obvious. All of this was thanks to him. There's nothing strange about it. The Whitebeard old man is probably trying to get some devil fruits to enhance the strength of the Whitebeard pirates. I'm afraid he realized that his body can't support him for a long time, so he made this plan to prevent accidents. Dustless's eyes lit up. Whitebeard is over 70 years old and has reached the limit of the human body. In addition, he is a pirate and has been on the battlefield for a long time. His body inevitably has countless old diseases. Some of them were given by Dustless before. How many people are there in the Whitebeard pirates? Dustless asked blankly. Not many. This kind of secret transaction is secretly monitored by Marine. There are only a few people on both sides. There are only 5 or 6 people in the Whitebeard pirates. White Jew explained. Well, I thought Whitebeard would prepare dozens of coffins. I didn't expect there to be only 5 or 6. Dustless's killing intent made the surrounding air as cold as ice. Lead the way. With Dustless's cold order, the 3 disappeared into the dusk. Brat, you dare to trick us. Don't push your luck. Remember what kind of people are standing in front of you. Ace said sternly, showing off his ability. In the dark space, Ace looked at the iron boxes on the ground and warned. These large boxes are all devil fruits, but they are all garbage. Only the dark fruit is an exception, but this group of country bumpkins didn't seem to recognize it. However, there is only one dark fruit. Most of them are artificial devil fruits passed down by Doflamingo. Although Kaido used artificial devil fruits to build an army of devil fruits, Whitebeard still chose to be careful and abandoned the artificial devil fruits. The unscrupulous selling is also deliberately allowed by Dustless. It won't be long before those people slowly collapse and die. Nonsense, so what if it's a man-made devil fruit? It's the real deal. Look at 100 Beast Kaido, his devil fruit army swept through the new world. The devil fruit dealer in charge of the transaction with Ace quibbled. How dare you? You still dare to argue? Ace glared at him angrily, flames already burning behind his back. You are the Whitebeard pirates. You have to follow the rules. Otherwise, no one will trade with you in the future except for me. Don't destroy your own future. The pirate responsible for the transaction was not willing to be outdone, but he was obviously not confident. After all, the other side is the Whitebeard pirates, one of the Yonko, 4 emperors. The Whitebeard pirates are the law. This is the rule. Hearing that, Fire Fist Ace laughed out of anger. The flames behind him burned even more intensely. Just as he was about to finish them off with a single blow, an untimely teasing voice rang out. The words of the Whitebeard pirates are the rules and the way. That's just self-deception. Can't you see that the reason why Whitebeard is working so hard to collect devil fruits is to improve the strength of your group of sons? To prevent you from being swallowed by other pirates when he dies one day. The disdainful voice resounded through the sky. In the dark warehouse, it didn't disperse for a long time. When mentioning the Whitebeard pirates, it was full of disdain and contempt. Ace suddenly turned his head and stared coldly at the place where the voice sounded. Since everything is according to the rules of the underworld, then I will be the arbitrator as a third party. Now I judge that the dark fruit is mine. As for you people, you will die to purify the air of the world. The calm voice was filled with carelessness, but it was strangely certain. Wu Qin and the other 2 walked out from the darkness. Chapter 663. Aware of Dustless's existence, Fire Fist Ace's pupils suddenly shrank. He instantly thought of the person who was forcibly abducted and flew away a few years ago. He always remembered it in his heart and didn't dare to forget. But after knowing that Dustless was a Marine Admiral, Ace did not rush to take revenge. After failing to challenge Dustless, he simply joined the Whitebeard pirates so that he could come in and face Dustless head-on. Don't stare at me so fiercely, you know that I am a very timid person. Seeing Ace staring at him, Dustless pretended to be afraid. Oh, it turned out to be a vase, but looking at it, it's just a pretty boy. The big man who was responsible for fighting Ace breathed a sigh of relief and stared at Dustless, Yushi, and White Zetsu with a green luster. Some things can't be seen, and seeing it means that he has to shut up. Pretty boy. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned and touched his face subconsciously. It seems that people in every world like to call him that. Father does have the talent to be a pretty boy, but it's better than the stinky beard that no one wants. Little Yushi blinked seriously. Dustless couldn't help but smile and gently tap the little girl's forehead with a little helplessness. This daughter's personality coincides with his and always likes to tease others. Looking for death. The brawny man who was responsible for trading with Fire Fist Ace was furious. How could he not hear Yushi's ridicule? He immediately waved the blade in his hand and whistled straight. The same was true for several brawny men behind him. Pucci, Dustless saw this scene and ripples splashed in the void behind him. Several long spears made of gold shot out and directly penetrated the abdomen of the 5 men, leaving clear bloody holes. Seeing this, Yushi's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to ask, Wu Chen's magnetic voice that seemed to be in control of everything sounded first. The king's treasure is only limited to me in the world. At the same time, his eyes carefully examined Fire Fist Ace, and he couldn't help but have a bright feeling. Now he is hundreds of times stronger than the young child of the beginning. You are much stronger than before. Thinking of the weak Ace who could be destroyed with a wave of his hand, and looking at him whose strength reached 550 million berries, Dustless couldn't help but feel emotional. This is all thanks to you, you are my motivation to move forward. Ace said contemptuously as he looked at the pirates who were killed by Dustless. These are all scum. Even if the 5 people add up, their bounty is less than 100 million berries, and their strength is completely different from his. I can see regret in your eyes, Ace, who was full of fighting spirit, growled. He can be sure that Wu Chen did not expect that today he would become a big pirate with a bounty of 550 million berries. Regret? Hearing this, Dustless's mouth curled into a playful smile, and he asked with great interest, "What do you think I will regret?" "Regret that you have become a pirate with a bounty of 550 million berries. Or, do you think that your current strength can threaten me, so you think that I am afraid of you, so you are happy?" With contempt in his eyes, Dustless's eyes were full of indifference. The loneliness of being at the top deeply stung Ace's nerves. His eyes were full of sneers as he looked at Ace as if looking at a bug. As the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, Ace's dignity was seriously challenged. Looking at Dustless coldly, Ace's killing intent was awe-inspiring. This is naked contempt. Dustless knows that he is the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, but he is still so frivolous. Obviously, he is satirizing the Whitebeard Pirates, and the person he respects the most, Whitebeard. You think you have calculated everything and can control everyone's fate? Ridiculous. The gears of fate are not something that people like you can predict, and I am not in the range of your narrow eyes. Ace shouted loudly. Immediately, his body jumped up, and bright sparks flashed in mid-air, and the hot temperature instantly melted the steel. Why don't you just vanish into thin air? Stop being so arrogant. Fire fist. A giant flame arm blasted over, and the temperature was frightening. In an instant, the entire dark warehouse was lit up, and the monstrous oppression was frightening. You are the one who deceives yourself. Taking a step forward, Dustless stared indifferently at the large flame fist falling down. He raised his white hand and a golden beam converged at the tip of his thumb. Laser. Whiz. Accompanied by a sharp piercing sound, the light condensed at the tip of his finger whizzed out, drawing a straight line in the air and unavoidably coming into contact with the falling flaming fist. Boom boom boom, there was a devastating explosion in mid-air, and the blazing heat wave directly destroyed the dark warehouse, and the steel almost turned into liquid in an instant. The coquettish dusk in the evening also shone, enveloping this wailing island. What a gorgeous sunset. But it's also suitable for the final requiem of your Whitebeard pirates. So that you won't come out of the grave to trouble me, it's also luxurious. Dustless chuckled. What arrogance! Ace's chill condensed, and the hot flame gathered in his hand. The oppressive posture seemed to be more terrifying than the rising sun, and the ground was burned black in an instant. A dazzling light enveloped Dustless, making him subconsciously close his eyes. Seeing this, Ace's face outlined a sneer arc, as if the victory was in his hand, and the raised big hand slammed down. Flame ring, pillar of fire. Boom boom boom, the blazing pillar of fire engulfed Dustless in an instant. The earth trembled. This unexpected calamity was like the wrath of the heavens. It happened so suddenly that Dustless was completely unaware that he was directly engulfed. God can't take you, I can only punish evil and promote good instead of him. Seeing Dustless being swallowed, Ace said, and a Marine Admiral would be injured by this move. Punish evil and promote good? I really don't know what this kind of small action is, and you can talk without knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. It seems that the Whitebeard pirates really have no one. Chapter 664. His eyes widened as Ace stared at the figure coming out of the fire pillar. His face was incredulous as his eyes widened and even showed signs of falling out. This guy can withstand fire ring with his physical strength alone. Ace's mentality was accustomed to storms and waves, but he couldn't help but feel suffocated at this moment. He never felt that this move could kill Dustless, but it's too unreasonable for him to be unscathed. You want to kill me, aren't you prepared? Dustless's eyes looked at Ace carefully as he said indifferently. Between the words, there was no trace of discomfort. Obviously, it wasn't an act. Don't be so surprised, I can tell you clearly, now is the beginning of your nightmare. Dustless sneered. Although the moves are exaggerated and powerful, it can't hurt him. Don't get carried away. Ace shouted with a dark face. He suddenly realized that as long as he gave in a little, Wu-Chen would go from bad to worse. If you gave him a jujube in return, he would give you 2 tight slaps and step on your face a few times. Only then would he be satisfied. So what if I'm proud, can you bite me? Dustless provoked. Then he raised his eyes and quietly looked at Ace, who was still in shock. His pupils twisted sharply and his eyes suddenly turned scarlet Sharingan. The evil eye power began to rage. Amaterasu. The enchanting black fire instantly swallowed Ace's body, but he was obviously prepared. The Amaterasu just passed through his body and didn't touch Ace. Are you an idiot? You have to use armament hockey to deal with a Logia user. Ace sneered, reminding Dustless out of kindness. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. I just don't think it's necessary to use armament hockey to deal with you. Don't be too self-righteous. Ace heard this and laughed angrily. As a Logia user and the 2nd Division captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, it was the first time he heard someone dare to speak so arrogantly. To deal with him without using armament hockey, Whitebeard may not have the courage to say so. Dustless didn't bother to talk nonsense with Ace. He directly appeared in front of him like a ghost and raised his right hand, revealing a small black hole. Seeing this, Ace did not hesitate and hurriedly used his elemental transformation to dodge the attack. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. A strange gravitational force enveloped Ace. That evil and cold devouring power seemed to want to devour him forever. On the other side of Dustless's little black hand, it seemed to be the abyss of the universe. As long as he was devoured, he would not be able to take another step forward. Determination flashed across Ace's eyes. He immediately cancelled his elemental transformation and broke free from the control of gravity. His entire body instantly felt much more relaxed. Seeing Ace materialize, Dustless was like an old fisherman who had been quietly waiting for a long time. He quietly appeared behind Ace, a sneer on his face. Then, a heavy kick mercilessly smashed down. Boom boom boom, a black shadow swept the ground out of thin air, the dust on the ground splashed, a large deep pit appeared, and the ground and the pit became like particles of debris. Cough cough cough, Poochie. After a long while, Ace in the deep pit supported his body with his arms on the ground and spat blood uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. Dustless didn't use hockey and actually attacked him, and it was not because of the attribute. He immediately looked at the black hole in the palm of Dustless's hand. After staring for a long time, his face was still blank. You are also the son of the Pirate King. Don't be so ignorant. It will insult your father's wisdom. Seeing Ace's ignorant face, Dustless chuckled. You dare to. Witnessing Dustless being so arrogant and conceited, Ace's loosened palm clenched again. When Logia's ability is elementalized, it means that the body loses mass and naturally can't escape the capture of gravity. Not only you, the host of the flame fruit, but every plant in the world is affected and restrained by gravity. Regardless of whether Ace could understand or not, Dustless explained. Why is the dark fruit called the most ferocious fruit? Because its ability is to control gravity, which means that everything in the world is affected by gravity, it's just that the gravity is strong or weak. The gravity of Ace's elementalization can naturally swallow him. In other words, gravity is the natural enemy of the whole world. However, the key is the strength of the host's own gravity. Even when gravity is strong to a certain extent, light can't escape its capture and will be easily swallowed, let alone the flame fruit. Do you still think you have a chance now? It's too boring to use armament hockey to deal with you. It's more suitable for me to trample on your self-esteem like this. Dustless stood with his hands behind his back and calmly looked at Ace. In the moment when he actually met Ace's face, the outcome of the battle was already decided. The outcome of the battle was not how Ace broke out, but how long Dustless wanted him to play, the natural enemy of everything. Why don't you try this? I hope you'll be able to take him down safely. Forcibly supporting his body to stand up, Ace looked at Dustless without fear. He was ready to die, and at the same time, his eyes signaled the crew of the Whitebeard pirates who had been watching the battle in the dark. It was obvious that he was telling them to run. Clearly, Ace was going to risk everything and go all out. Want to run? I'm a glint fruit user. What do you think the word escape means? Staring at the black shadows fleeing in the distance, Dustless sneered again and again, his body swept with a bright luster, and he almost came to them in an instant. A strong oppressive flash gathered on his toes. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? But looking at your eyes, you shouldn't have enjoyed such high-level treatment. The light gathered on his right calf roared down, and the straight line in the air was particularly dazzling. Chapter 665. Run. Don't you Whitebeard pirates pay attention to teamwork? In that case, going to heaven together is also a kind of teamwork. A voice filled with indifference to life resounded through the clouds. The few figures, who wanted to flee in a panic, were stunned. They stared blankly at the straight beam of light descending from the sky. Their eyes and faces were filled with despair. Dustless is not surprised by this scene. Most pirates say that they don't care about life and death, but how many people can really see through it? Even he himself is afraid of death. Boom! The light from the soles of his feet hit the ground like a meteorite, setting off a violent storm and vibration. A large flame of light swept up from the ground out of thin air, and then an invisible wave of air turned into a turbulent shock wave that scattered, swallowing everything around it. The hot fire melted and destroyed the surrounding geography, leaving a deep scorched pit in the ground. Boom! A special box escaped the catastrophe, but it was also burned and the surface turned dark red. Obviously, as long as the fire continued to persist for a while, it would melt. You killed them. Eyes locked on Dustless, Ace roared hysterically. The Whitebeard pirates pay attention to unity, and each of them is the son of Whitebeard, which also proves that the feelings of their crew members are also like brothers. Good companions on the road to the underworld, so you won't be so lonely. Dustless said with an expression that should be so. Since Whitebeard pays attention to teamwork and sends all of them on the road to heaven, Dustless feels that this special service is quite humane. Holding the iron box in his hand with a heavy look, Ace couldn't feel the hot temperature. He was like a walking corpse. The death of his companions hit Ace so hard that it almost made him collapse. Even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Ace roared in a low voice, determined to die. Dustless always remains indifferent to this. It's just the last cry of the beast. It's meaningless. It's just an extremely boring verbal protest. It's not very practical. For this group of pirates, Dustless has always held a contemptuous attitude. They become pirates in the name of pursuing their dreams, but more than 95% of pirates are killing and looting, and there is no rule that states that pursuing one's dream is to become a pirate. This is just their self-deceiving idea. Yang Yen. With a burst of sound, Ace's limbs suddenly appeared with some hot flames, wrapping around him, which is also a disguised defense that can resist most physical attacks. Flashy but impractical, if this trick is useful. Your whitebeard pirates would have dominated the New World long ago. Dustless sneered with a cold light in his eyes. Then his pupils widened, and the majestic evil eye power lashed out, locking Ace's position. Almost in a short blink of an eye, Dustless came in front of him, gathering a powerful force in his hand, and mercilessly smashed it towards Ace. As for the flames covering his limbs, he simply ignored them. A single spark could not start a prairie fire. Boom! A powerful fist hit Ace's abdomen, but he had already expected Dustless to launch an attack and used elementalization to avoid the fatal fist. Your sneak attack, I predicted it. With a sneer, Ace's right arm suddenly erupted with a large flame fist, completely condensed by a raging fire. Fire fist. The moment the hot flames engulfed Dustless, his left eye suddenly widened, and a strange purple eye with 9 mysterious magatama suddenly flashed. You predicted it, what's the use? I also expected it, but it doesn't make sense to predict your tricks. The dry corners of his mouth opened slightly, and an indifferent voice came out of it. The corners of his clothes were eroded by some kind of force and swelled instantly. Shinra Tensei. The repulsive force visible to the naked eye erupted in an instant, forming a 360-degree absolute defense. The moment the mighty flaming fist came into contact with Dustless, it was simply swallowed up by this repulsive force. In an instant, the matter was settled peacefully. The exploding flames were like rain splashing all over the ground. Dustless's eyes fell on the broken corner of Ace's clothes, and he smiled, and the Rinnegan Sharingan in his left eye widened again, emitting a mysterious ripple, and the 9 black magatama in the eye socket trembled slightly. Heavenly hand power. Dustless's position and the broken corner of his clothes instantly changed. Disappeared. Seeing Wu Chen disappear strangely like a ghost, Ace exclaimed in surprise. His tone was filled with surprise and disbelief, revealing the meaning of a fantasy story. A living person suddenly disappeared without a trace in front of his eyes, and his breath was completely gone. No one could accept it, and the shock it brought was unparalleled. Immediately, he felt a chill behind him, and subconsciously turned his head, and the scene in front of him was quite horrifying. Dustless's face was covered with frost, and his cold eyes had no luster, just like a corpse, staring at Ace with eyes full of light, and there seemed to be countless fangs and a bloody mouth that could easily swallow him. At this moment, Ace never felt that death was so close. Fire gun. Resisting the suppression of the fear in his heart, Ace's fingers shot out continuous small flames. Bang bang bang, the sudden flame instantly swallowed Dustless, igniting his head, and the raging fire burned. A person's head was burning with an inextinguishable fire, and there was no chance of survival. It should be working now. Ace heaved a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a ghostly low moan and blazing heat came, causing his relieved heart to immediately tense up again. How is this possible? Looking up, he saw a strange black flame on Dustless's head. The strange black flame swallowed Ace's flame. At first it was the human face, and almost instantly it swallowed and annihilated the crimson flame on Dustless's face, revealing his unscathed self. Chapter 666. The black flames were noble and evil, like the king of all fires, swallowing Ace's flames easily, as if he had met his natural enemy and had no power to fight back, overbearing and direct. It can devour my flames. Ace's tone was filled with surprise and doubt. He was quite surprised. The flame of flame fruit is famous in the world for its power. Ace said that it was the first time in his life that he had encountered a flame that could swallow him. It's really not simple. The vicissitudes of life sighed from Dustless's mouth. As his voice fell, the flames burning on his head also disappeared, revealing the intact Dustless. His skin and face were abnormally clean, as white and tender as before, and even his hair was not damaged at all. Flame attacks are useless against me. In fact, you lost at the beginning of this battle. Dustless looked at Ace and said coldly. His eyes widened, and the overbearing and unstoppable repulsion broke out again. Shinra Tensei. Boom. Although he used elementalization to escape at the first time, his whole body turned into a pile of flames and he was easily bounced back by the oncoming repulsion. The flames were all over the ground. Why didn't father kill him directly? Yushi blinked and asked curiously. Maybe he wants to use him, Fire Fist Ace. The value of using him is far greater than killing him. White Zetsu guessed in a deep voice. Following Dustless for many years, he was not ignorant. The Whitebeard pirates are loyal and righteous, which is their unity and fatal weakness. Emotional bondage is always a double-edged sword, and it depends on how it is used. If it is not handled properly, it will naturally become a fatal poison. If I remember correctly, you were full of confidence just now, but now you are in a mess. Dustless said indifferently, his angular face without sadness or joy. The flames on the ground closed, and Ace's figure was recondensed, holding the iron box in his hand tightly. His eyes changed back and forth, and the hesitation on his face finally turned into determination. Your purpose should be for the dark fruit. Ace's sharp eyes looked straight at Dustless, and he said affirmatively. The early bird gets the worm, and the early worm gets eaten by the bird. Up until now, Ace could only admit that he was unlucky. Facing this cruel reality, Ace believed that he was no match for Dustless. However, he would never let Dustless get what he wanted. I'm indeed here for the dark fruit. Why? Could it be that you want to give it to me? Stop dreaming. Even if you beg for mercy, I won't let you go. As Whitebeard's 2nd Division captain, you should understand your value. Dustless said bluntly. Ace only had a sneer on his face, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a strange smile, as if victory was already in his grasp. Are you still confident in yourself? Dustless frowned. He couldn't help but admire Ace's tenacity. At this point, even an ignorant child could tell who was the victor. You want it. Ace threw the iron box aside and took out the dark fruit with a strange purple pattern. The smile on the corner of his mouth became more obvious. Ace looked at Dustless playfully, and there was a hint of ridicule in his tone. He smiled and said, "What do you think will happen if I eat it?" Having said that, Ace's smile became wider. This was also a thought that suddenly flashed in his mind. The world said that a devil fruit ability user could only eat one, but no one knew what would happen if he ate two. Ace was gambling. If he could die, it would be best. This way, neither he nor the dark fruit would fall into Dustless's hands. If he didn't die, his strength would skyrocket. Therefore, he looked at Dustless expectantly. He thought that Dustless's face would turn blue, but what he saw was surprisingly calm. If you can eat it, you can try. Dustless looked at Ace calmly with a frozen expression. Hearing this, Ace's face darkened. Dustless' words seemed to mean that he didn't dare and didn't have the ability. It was as if the devil fruit in his hand could fly out of thin air. Flying into a rage out of humiliation, Ace directly brought it to his mouth. Ha ha ha. Ace, he's right. You really can't eat it. That thing is mine. A naive kid like you can't use the dark fruit's ability. Just give it to me, idiot. Unbridled mockery resounded through the boundless sky, followed by a gust of wind that swept past Ace. The dark, chilly wind made one's hair stand on end. Suddenly, he felt that his hand was empty. The devil fruit that was about to be put into his mouth disappeared into thin air. He subconsciously opened his eyes. Bastard, which bastard stole my devil fruit? After a moment of sluggishness, Ace opened his eyes and his eyes spat fire. Because of his excessive anger, his already overdrawn physical strength erupted again. It was even more vast and infinite than before. He instinctively looked at Dushless, but saw that he had an expression that said it had nothing to do with him. He pointed to the figure hidden in the darkness on the left. Ace subconsciously forgot about it. Titch. Why are you here? Ace's expression changed drastically as he glared at him with an unfriendly expression. The blurry figure was clearly visible in the darkness. It had messy hair, an ugly face, uneven teeth, a protruding belly, and a dense chest hair. In the whole world, other than Blackbeard Marshal D. Titch, no one else had such a sneaky look. Ace breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was one of his own. No, this guy had an ambush. How did he know that I traded the devil fruit with others on the island? Ace's relieved heart suddenly tightened. Realizing that something was wrong, Ace's face changed drastically. TSK, the final winner is still me. Blackbeard smiled proudly, unusually arrogant. In fact, he had been secretly watching the battle for a long time. He was forced to come out when he saw Ace about to swallow the dark fruit. How did he know that you traded? Isn't that simple? Because the people you killed were originally my underlings. Blackbeard became even more pleased with himself when he spoke up to this point. Every devil fruit transaction, he actually sent people to secretly observe. The fundamental purpose of his hiding in the Whitebeard pirates was to get the dark fruit. As for the filial piety of his father, he left it to his filial sons. Chapter 667. Looking at the dark fruit in his hand, Blackbeard was beaming with joy. His eyes were filled with greed. For today, he had endured for 10 to 20 years and suffered countless humiliation. Until today, his dream was realized. Blackbeard's eyes emitted the glow of a tiger and wolf. Even his breathing was unusually heavy. Immediately, he opened his large mouth and swallowed without any hesitation. He didn't even peel the skin. Dustless, Sama, why didn't you stop the kid? The dark fruit is gone again. White Zetsu was depressed. He was sure that Dustless had the ability to stop him, but he remained indifferent. Wuchen just kept silent and had a strange expression on his face. After a while, seeing that Blackbeard had completely swallowed the entire dark fruit, Dustless couldn't help but say, "How loud is Blackbeard's voice?" He swallowed the dark fruit directly and didn't choke to death. His words petrified everyone in an instant, including Fire Fist Ace's body. He looked at Dustless in a new light. This is really big. White Zetsu, who recovered, agreed. Everyone nodded secretly. They didn't expect Blackbeard to be able to swallow the dark fruit. It was rare for a monster to be able to swallow a devil fruit with a human body. Naturally, Blackbeard could hear the mockery in his words. He just sneered. Kha. This power really makes one jump for joy. Blackbeard said as he danced with joy. His entire body was emitting black light as he carefully experienced the dark energy that was swimming in his body. Blackbeard's rough old face was fanatical, filled with excitement and joy. Blackbeard. Why are you here? Ace questioned, his murderous intent was obvious. It seems that you are an idiot. Blackbeard sneered, I lurked in the Whitebeard pirates from the beginning for the dark fruit. You want me to work for Whitebeard? Do I look like such a kind person to you? Blackbeard teased. His thick lips were raised high as if he was a villain who had achieved his goal. These words instantly aroused Ace's killing intent. Mirror fire, boom. Just as he was about to kill Blackbeard, an unexpected gunshot suddenly sounded. Ace's body had a terrible bloody hole out of thin air. Excellent marksmanship. It seems that Blackbeard hasn't done nothing these years. He has a reliable companion. His pupils narrowed as he thought of the Blackbeard pirate sniper. Dustless nodded. This bullet obviously has armament hockey, so it can penetrate Ace. Overconfident trash, you think you can kill me? Looking at Ace with disdain, Blackbeard laughed sinisterly. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with a cautious look. As the youngest and arguably the strongest admiral in marine history, his strength is beyond imagination. Being able to crush Ace like a bug explained everything. Moreover, looking at Wu Chen's appearance, it was obvious that he wasn't serious. Dark water. Seeing that Dustless didn't show any signs of interfering, a strong gravitational force shot out from his hand. It was abnormally powerful, and it easily sucked Ace over in an instant. Boom! Ruthlessly stepping on the ground, Blackbeard looked down at Ace. How about it, my 2nd Division captain, if you are willing to be my subordinate, I don't mind letting you go. At the same time, he looked at Dustless with a hidden look, which obviously means that they can join hands to kill him. In this regard, Dustless turned a deaf ear and stood in place, completely ignoring both of them. Blackbeard was furious. He had already eaten the dark fruit, and this kid was still so arrogant. In your dreams. I'd rather be that man's subordinate than you. You're even more despicable than him. Ace sneered and pointed at Wu Chen. Hearing this, Blackbeard's face turned green. You are looking for death. Blackbeard said with a fierce look in his eyes. There was a dark luster in his hand, and space and time showed signs of distortion. When he was about to kill Ace, a cold smile swept across his face, cruel and numbing. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish and send you to heaven, but it is too easy for you to die so quickly, Captain. Blackbeard said in a joking tone. The Whitebeard pirates pay attention to their companions. I can tell you that a few years ago, the death of the 4th Division Captain Thatch was caused by me. No. I encouraged him to steal the dark fruit. I didn't expect that fool to be so fearless for the safety of Whitebeard. What an idiot. Ha 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 ha. Blackbeard laughed wildly, and his proud smile was full of endless arrogance. You bastard, I'll tear you to shreds. Hearing this, Ace's eyes were bloodshot and looked as if they were about to fall out. The Whitebeard pirates' principle of mutual love is deeply rooted in people's hearts. There is no distinction between the crew members, and they are all one of Whitebeard's sons. Hey! If you don't like me, you can come and kill me. You're just a mere rat. You should know when to stop. A ghostly voice suddenly resounded behind him. Blackbeard was suddenly stunned. He turned his head abruptly and looked at Wu Chen, who was behind him with his hair standing on end. Looking at your silly look, I am upset. Do you really think you are in control of everything? Don't be so self-righteous. Dustless sneered. Light speed kick. Regardless of how the dull Blackbeard was, his calf covered with golden luster mercilessly hit Blackbeard's old face, and he suddenly flew out like a cannonball. The ground was pulled into a deep scorched gully. Idiot, you provoked Thatch to steal the dark fruit, but the source of the dark fruit is me. In the end, you are just a pawn in my calculations, idiot Blackbeard, hee hee. Chapter 668. Dustless smiled and looked at Blackbeard, who was like a stray dog, and his heart was particularly refreshed. This old guy is as smart as a mouse, and it's not easy to get rid of him. What did you say? Blackbeard roared, covering his burnt face. The power of the lightspeed kick was unusual, and it happened suddenly. There was no gap in Blackbeard's defense, and he was completely exposed under Dustless's eyes. In addition to being destroyed, he was still destroyed. You bastard, I will not let you go, absolutely. He got up from the ground in a sorry state and looked at his nose. Blackbeard's heart was cloudy. he didn't expect Wu Qin to be so ruthless. His nose was kicked crooked. Ah, ah, ah. Don't look so hateful. No matter what, you ate the dark fruit. I thought you could withstand this blow, Wu Qin said matter-of-factly, seemingly quite disappointed. Blackbeard's face was blue. If he could, he would never want to fight a marine admiral. After all, the strength of an admiral is known to the world. Even Kizaru, Akainu, and Akiji are now among the top peerless masters. The one in front of him is even more shocking. He served as a marine admiral 10 years ago. His information is the oldest, and he rarely fights. Of course, it's because the people who have seen Dustless fight have disappeared. What do you mean? What does the dark fruit from 10 years ago have to do with you? Blackbeard asked gloomily, and at the same time, he was on guard against Dustless. He glared at Ace fiercely. As long as there was a chance, he would choose to kill him. Don't you understand? I thought you were smarter than others, but now it seems that I took it for granted. Dustless shook his head and sighed. In order to cause the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Imam pirates, I contributed the dark fruit that I had been looking for several years, and you are responsible for appearing in my play. Dustless said calmly and seriously talked about the plan 10 years ago. In order to cause the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Imam pirates, he spent a lot of effort. He was afraid that no one would be fooled. This is thanks to the witty Blackbeard who recommended himself as the first male lead. Thinking of this, Dustless involuntarily gave a thumbs up to Blackbeard. His acting skills had reached perfection. First male lead. Hearing this, Blackbeard's rough face twitched and he stared at Dustless. If eyes could kill, Dustless would have been cut into pieces by now. The blood and chi in his chest roiled, and Blackbeard felt as if there was a huge boulder blocking his chest, almost suffocating him. Go to hell. Blackbeard stared at Wu Qin and flashed a cruel smile. Although I don't know what kind of fruit you have, it seems to be very similar to Kizaru's. It would be disrespectful for me to refuse. After saying that, Blackbeard's body emitted a strange black gravitational force. Just like what you said before, nothing can escape the grasp of gravity. Blackbeard's palms suddenly turned pitch black and aimed at Wu Qin, erupting with a strong gravitational force. Dark water. The powerful gravity pulled Dustless back in an instant. Blackbeard sneered, then his right arm clenched into a fist and smashed towards Dustless's face without hesitation. Dustless just responded with a sneer. Shinra Tensei. At the moment of contact with Blackbeard, a strong repulsive force broke out and swallowed Blackbeard in an instant. Boom! Blackbeard, who was caught off guard, was instantly bounced away. The powerful force smashed several walls and fell into a deep pit with blood all over his body. Damn it, it hurts. Blackbeard screamed, his fat body fell to the ground and rolled, looking extremely painful. His 5 fingers were all wearing various gemstone rings, showing the temperament of a nouveau riche. Playing with gravity in front of me. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Dustless rubbed his head and looked at the screaming Blackbeard with a headache. His face was full of helplessness. In front of Tensigan and Rinnegan, the dark fruit's gravity was not worth mentioning. When the power of Chibaku Tensei reached a certain level, it was enough to create the moon, and the repulsive force of Tensigan could control the moon. Compared with these two, the dark fruit was meaningless. In addition, the biggest disadvantage of the dark fruit was that it was the essence of darkness and could not be elementalized. The pain it suffered was also doubled, so it would be torturous to be hit by Shinra Tensei. This pain is nothing. If I get you, I can get your ability. This pain is not worth mentioning at all. Blackbeard stood up crazily, and his whole body was covered with monstrous darkness. It was vast and surging like a black dragon, instantly spreading and swallowing the entire island. Caw caw caw, on this unknown island, the surrounding buildings were swallowed in an instant, and all kinds of life were absorbed. Even the surface was pulled out, revealing a lifeless appearance. Everything was hit hard. In the face of gravity, everything in the world was so fragile. This was because Blackbeard was not proficient in it after eating the dark fruit. Ha ha ha. Even if you repent now, I will not let you go. Blackbeard laughed maniacally like a maniac. He raised his voice and exposed his belly. He did not care about Wuchen's feelings and laughed maniacally. Perhaps in his eyes, Dustless was a worthless corpse after he deprived him of his ability. After a few breaths, all the darkness disappeared. Liberate! Suddenly, with a roar from Blackbeard, a black pillar of light suddenly emerged from his body. All kinds of buildings and the earth that had been swallowed before were released and gathered into a large area. The terrifying momentum almost crushed the entire sky. With a wave of his hand, all of it smashed toward Dustless. Amazing momentum, no wonder you can be so confident. Raising his eyelids, he looked at Blackbeard with pity. Dustless obviously didn't mean what he said. Although he was praising Blackbeard, there was always a slight smile on his face. Then, a black energy ball swept towards the sky. Chibaku Tensei. Chapter 669. Blackbeard's face was flushed, and even because of excessive excitement, his whole face was as red as a monkey's butt. He looked at the falling debris of various houses that almost covered the sky and gasped directly. This is the strongest and most evil devil fruit in history. He 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 he. Are you scared, silly? Are you kidding me? The wild laughter stopped, and it was sharp. Blackbeard's pupils widened, and he looked up at the black bead in the sky. His excited heart felt like it was stepped on hundreds of times, and the pain was unforgettable. Boom boom boom, the majestic gravity that was enough to destroy the entire island rushed out from the black bead, and the whole earth trembled violently as if there was a magnitude 10 earthquake. The island is shaking. No, according to the frequency of the vibration, it seems like the entire world is shaking. Blackbeard exclaimed in disbelief. His old face was cold, and he felt the boundless gravity. His hair stood on end, and it almost tore his body into pieces. He looked at the ugly black sphere in the sky in horror, and his heart was in his throat. Blackbeard was different from Red Hair, Shanks and Whitebeard. He was a real villain, and his life was very important. Everything he did was based on his life. Of course, it was undeniable that he was indeed very successful. Even Whitebeard, who had lived for more than half a century, fell in the hands of Blackbeard. Blackbeard, you have been wrong from the beginning to the end. I am not Red Hair Shanks, nor Whitebeard. You only look at me at the level of a general. Extremely ignorant. Dustless sneered, and he was full of contempt for Blackbeard. He and Red Hair, or Whitebeard, fought with their lives on the line. Only Blackbeard was opportunistic, and he would immediately slip away when he saw that the wind was not right. No wonder he did not have Haoshiku Haki. Don't push your luck. Blackbeard warned with a black face, but he did not sound confident. So what if I push my luck? I still want to kick your nose and slap you until you are confused. His eyes shot out a cold light, and a burst of evil eye power jumped out from his eyes, and the void rippled. Open your dog eyes and let me see what is real gravity. As soon as he finished speaking, Wuchen put his palms together and shouted loudly. Ha! The black pearls floating in the sky instantly increased their gravitational force by dozens of times. They became denser and wider, covering the entire island. You bastard, what are you trying to do? Let me tell you, this island is finished. As a devil fruit user, you will become a drowned rat. Don't act rashly. Blackbeard quickly roared, also, aren't you a righteous marine? Are you going to kill everyone in this path? Blackbeard thought that he was crazy enough, but he suddenly found that he was not half as crazy as Dustless. As a Marine, he wanted all the people on this island to be buried with him. This should be the script for One Piece. You took the wrong script. At the same time, his vigilance against Dustless rose rapidly. Compared with the crazy old man Dustless, the latter is not even worthy of being an apprentice. People like Dustless who do things as he pleases are more difficult to deal with than anyone else. Of course I won't do it. Although I've killed countless people, I'm not a heartless person. It's just that you used to think highly of yourself and despise everything. But now, your heart and soul are trembling. Human nature is really hard to predict. Tut tut. Wu-chan smiled and joked. The shaking of the whole earth also stopped, but there was an unprecedented meteorite in the sky, completely condensed from the buildings of the entire town. The shadow coincides with the island. Is this really something that humans can do? Blackbeard's forehead was full of cold sweat, and he was full of fear. Staring at Dustless's immature face, and thinking of his past experience, there are only two endings when encountering his enemies: either they are erased forever, or they are thrown into impel down with broken limbs. People who can do this kind of thing, Blackbeard can only think of one word: God. Ace, who was seriously injured and unconscious, was also stunned. The exaggerated meteorite filled the entire sky and occupied his entire field of vision. Maybe with just one order, the island will collapse. Blackbeard, do you know the difference between human beings and God? Dustless seemed to see through Blackbeard's inner thoughts, and immediately stretched lazily, and tiredly said. Hearing this, Blackbeard was stunned and said bluntly, difference? God can destroy the world with a flick of his finger, and normal human beings can only look at the sky from the bottom of a well. Blackbeard's face was full of unwillingness. Since ancient times, who didn't want to surpass this vast sky? It's just that no one can do it. Dustless just shook his finger, and his eyes fell into memory. Suddenly, he remembered the figure of Uchiha Madara in the last world. In fact, he already understood what a god is. The ambition of human beings is just to rule the paradise in front of them. Their vision is vulgar and narrow, but God uses everything in the world as a chessboard and chess pieces. This is the essential difference. Dustless said indifferently. Just like Kaguya, the goddess of Uno, she doesn't care about the so-called world at all, because she can create such a world in an instant. All human beings are her soldiers, but they are also chess pieces. Blackbeard carefully tasted the philosophy in it, and suddenly felt that Dustless's words were very reasonable. If you want to transcend this world, you can't be limited by the vulgar word world. Blackbeard suddenly felt particularly cheerful. One Piece and the king of the world are actually floating clouds. Eternal immortality is the way of the king, and for a time, his ambition soared. Staring at Dustless's smiling face, Blackbeard's smile instantly froze, and he realized that something was wrong. Are you saying that you treat everyone as a chess piece or a toy? With a black face, Blackbeard asked gloomily, thinking that Dustless was pointing out his bright path, but he didn't expect that he was taking the opportunity to ridicule him for overestimating himself. What do you think? With a smile on his face, Dustless shook his hand, and the floating meteorite in the sky also trembled. Some soil peeled off, not much, but all fell on Blackbeard's head. Chapter 670. Blackbeard's rough face was dull and fearful. He was originally a person who was afraid of death. Suddenly, he was shocked to find that there were countless particles and all kinds of dust hitting his head, and he subconsciously shook his head. A large piece of soil suddenly peeled off. His face became more and more ugly, his breathing was heavier than usual, and even the skin on the surface of his body trembled a little, and he involuntarily stepped back. Dustless's small hand shook, and the super-large meteorite in the sky also jumped. This indescribable oppression almost forced Blackbeard to collapse, and sweat kept falling like raindrops. I can't be caught by him so easily. My dream is not to just eat the dark fruit and report to the dark hell of Impel Down. It's too early. Blackbeard roared with his hand down, his tone was like a mad dog. A cornered dog will jump over the wall, and the crazy actions of Blackbeard were beyond imagination. Ah, it's really hard for you. Don't be so nervous. I said it won't fall on your head. After all, this is equivalent to a move of mutual destruction. Pointing to the meteorite, Dustless waved his hand and chuckled, indicating Blackbeard to rest assured. Your words can only deceive ghosts. Blackbeard's eyes widened, and after a muffled groan, a cruel and treacherous arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. His body suddenly plunged into darkness and swallowed him in an instant. Immediately, the black mist suddenly disappeared, and Blackbeard himself also dissipated. Ha! The dark fruit has this ability. Dustless's calm eyes splashed with ripples, and he was slightly surprised. He had never heard that the dark fruit had such a strange and unpredictable ability. He actually used the dark fruit to swallow Blackbeard himself. However, it's just a flashy trick. Observation hockey spread out and took in the wind and grass around him. Dustless suddenly chuckled casually, and the teasing laughter was obviously full of sarcasm and ridicule. The void inevitably swayed with slight ripples. Even if the concealment was seamless, it was still tantamount to a fool's dream to escape from Dustless's perception. Covering up will only increase vulnerability and make oneself look more pale and powerless. This is an evasion in the face of cruel reality. Whiz! A black iron rod condensed in his hand in an instant, and he immediately turned and threw it out with all his strength. How did this guy find me? Blackbeard was shocked and quickly revealed his physical body. Although this black iron rod looked ordinary, it gave him goosebumps. Then, he activated the dark fruit's ability without hesitation. Dark water. There was a distortion in the void, and a black whirlpool suddenly appeared and swallowed the black iron rod in an instant. He actually swallowed yin-yang release. This is actually no different from an alternative space ninjutsu. Dustless secretly nodded and guessed. Release. With a loud shout, a thick black darkness suddenly emerged from Blackbeard's body. A black iron staff darted out from within, aiming at Dustless. Idiot! You want to use my ability to defeat me? You're still dreaming. Dustless leaped into the air and casually kicked away the iron rod that was transformed from the yin-yang escape. To others, the yin-yang escape was something that could not be touched. It had no effect on him at all. The focus of his line of sight turned to Blackbeard's body. His pupils were enlarged, and there were ripples in his eyes. There was a faint black irregular flame jumping. Amaterasu! Along with Dustless's voice falling, Blackbeard's body suddenly flashed with a black monstrous flame. The biggest disadvantage of the dark fruit was that it could not be elementalized. It was dark itself, so it could not be elementalized like other natural ability users. Ouch! It hurts so much. What the hell is this? Blackbeard's face was filled with astonishment as he howled in pain. His screams of pain were torturous. As time passed, his screams became sharper and sharper. He was filled with despair towards his fate. He let out a low roar, filled with unprecedented hatred towards Dustless. Get out of my way, how can I be burned by this thing? The tortured Blackbeard waved his hand, and endless darkness broke out of his body and directly swallowed the burning Amaterasu. Blackbeard stood up awkwardly, and there was a burnt stench all over his body. Where did this roasted pig come from? It's so disgusting. Would anyone eat it? Dustless smiled as he looked at Blackbeard, who was almost burnt to charcoal. Blackbeard was unmoved. His eyes were about to crack, and then he smiled cruelly. Then I'll return it to you. Enjoy it. Release. The ugly body once again erupted with a black pillar that shot into the sky. The swallowed Amaterasu was released and instantly ignited Dustless's body. You idiot, you don't seem to understand human language. I already said that my attack doesn't work on me, but against others, it's a natural enemy. Dustless looked at Blackbeard hopelessly. His body suddenly erupted with a strong devouring force, and it was like a black hole. It swallowed the Amaterasu fire in an instant. He could absorb all techniques. Hee hee. So what? Your attack doesn't work on me. Any attack can be absorbed by me. This is the power of the dark fruit. Ordinary people can't understand it. Blackbeard smiled with exultation. The dark fruit was the most ferocious devil fruit in history. When its power was used to the limit, it was not inferior to Whitebeard's tremor fruit. It was even more comprehensive in some aspects. The confidence in his words made people involuntarily convinced. It seemed that everything would play out as he predicted, and there was no escape from Blackbeard's control. Is that so? Then for the next move, you have to pay attention. Don't get killed. Sometimes it's extremely difficult to control strength. In short, I'll try to suppress it as much as possible like before. His body suddenly flashed with an emerald brilliance, and an unprecedented storm was brewing in Dustless's hand. Chapter 671. The violent hurricane was biting cold. Even the floating meteorites in the sky were rotating with the wind speed, constantly trembling. Blackbeard felt a burst of fear when he saw this. He was afraid that Dustless's technique was not good enough and he would be implicated. It's funny that such a cowardly person could become one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, in the future. Sometimes the goddess of fate is really blind. Dustless couldn't help but complain. Blackbeard didn't care. He sneered at the idea of risking one's life. Only by doing so could one set foot on the top. The so-called dignity was like human clothes. When one didn't wear it, it didn't matter. At most, one would be mocked by others. But when one wore it, Blackbeard thought it was just a facade. The emerald light gradually enveloped Wu Chen's entire body. His entire body emitted a noble luster that couldn't be offended. He was so lofty that Blackbeard could only look up to him. You think you've turned the tables? It's not too late to dream now. Dustless, who had completely entered the Tensigan chakra mode, looked at him coldly. This guy was too arrogant. As long as he deliberately exposed a flaw to let him take advantage of him, he would immediately start to raise his nose to the sky. Whoosh! Between his hands, a hurricane was spinning rapidly. The hurricane was not large, about the size of Dustless's arm, but this awe-inspiring hurricane was extremely domineering. Damn it! You made me so scared. Grandpa Titch can handle such a ridiculous trick without running. Blackbeard's old face suddenly became arrogant, and he sneered at Dustless. However, before he could be proud of himself, a crimson halo enveloped him in the next second. Fire ring, pillar of fire. Blackbeard's face was dull, and he instinctively looked up. Surrounded by the cylindrical flame halo, the temperature around him began to rise rapidly. Flame. Looking at the flame falling from the sky, Blackbeard was stunned. Boom! The pillar of light condensed on Blackbeard's body suddenly exploded, and the earth trembled. The flame full of majestic destructive power was unstoppable, annihilating Blackbeard in an unstoppable manner. Looking over, it was Fire Fist Ace who launched the sneak attack. This guy is quite interesting. Dustless's eyes lit up. His view of Ace had also changed. The reason why he hadn't launched an attack was because he had sensed Ace's awakening and knew that this guy was preparing a big move. He originally thought that he would sneak an attack on Dustless, but he didn't expect that his target would be Blackbeard. Perhaps compared to the despicable and shameless Blackbeard, Dustless was much kinder. I really hope to see this scene of you being beaten until you look for your teeth on the ground. Unfortunately, I have already reached my limit. Ace said in a haggard manner. Immediately, he unwillingly shut his eyes. Taking a closer look, there was a deep red bloody hole in Ace's abdomen. It was almost pierced through. It was already a miracle that he was able to hold on until now. Most likely, he would pass away soon. Dustless frowned and looked at White Zoo. Obviously, he couldn't let the kid die peacefully. It wasn't that he was suddenly kind-hearted and thought that he would have compassion for Ace by suddenly helping him. Wu-Chen wasn't the kind of person who would practice medicine to help the world. It was just that Ace who was alive was more valuable than him who was dead. White Zoo nodded, indicating that there was no problem. At the same time, the pillar of flame that shrouded Blackbeard's body gradually dissipated, revealing Blackbeard who was black all over. His hair was all burned. Fortunately, I already had a defense, otherwise, I really would have lost my combat power. It's not impossible to be killed. Blackbeard rejoiced after surviving a disaster. Taking a closer look, he had already become bald, and his whole body was in tatters. Ha ha ha, you deserve it, you idiot. Staring at the unconscious and dying Ace, Blackbeard laughed wildly. His hatred for Ace disappeared in an instant. Anyway, there was no need to argue with a dead person. However, in the next second, his eyes widened strangely, and the refracted gaze was full of disbelief. White Zoo walked to Ace's side and looked at his wound. He didn't hesitate to cut off his right arm and put it into Ace's bloody abdomen. The white arm melted like liquid in an instant. This guy is surrounded by alien creatures. Blackbeard whispered to himself. Immediately, something even more unbelievable happened. The mysterious white liquid circled around Ace's eroded chest, and it had the magical power of decay. The wound, which was damaged by the bullet with armament hockey, slowly healed. Are you kidding me? How could this happen? Blackbeard roared in shock, with a sharp tone. At the same time, his eyes narrowed, and the light from his eyes was extremely dangerous. His eyes were locked on White Zoo, and he couldn't wait to rub him into his body. White Zoo couldn't help but have goosebumps. Are you kidding? Making a fuss out of nothing. Bringing the dead back to life is merely a thought from me. It's just that this brat doesn't have the chance to enjoy this kind of treatment, Dustless said nonchalantly. Resurrection, not reincarnation, this is the essence of Rinnegan. If you kneel and beg for mercy, lie down and shout, I am a roasted pig 3 times. I will reluctantly let you go. Dustless looked at Blackbeard, who was exuding a strange smell. At the same time, the power of the arm-sized Takenabu in his hand was reduced. Fuck, you are dreaming. Blackbeard roared sharply, his teeth were almost broken, and blood was visible to the naked eye. He was afraid of death, and he could give up all dignity in order to live, but he couldn't be tortured by Dustless. Sometimes even a stray dog wants human rights. The negotiation failed, in this case. I wish you can survive. The Takenabu, which was about to dissipate, enlarged again and always maintained the size of an arm. It looked quite pale and weak. Just with this. Come at me, I promise I won't run. Blackbeard sneered. Dustless's face was full of ridicule, and he couldn't help but shake his head. The people in this world seemed to be a bit narrow-minded, including Whitebeard. Silver Will Reincarnation Explosion. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.